a non-binary Canadian player on the women's team. And so the ruling, I believe, with FIFA was that, well, because she played for the women's team prior to her being non-binary, it is okay for her to continue to play for the women's team, which I thought was probably an appropriate decision, and it just allows for the game to continue on as it did. The NCAA instances.
You're 6 minutes away from a live episode of Free Talk Live. Listen live at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. More than 4 million people have now fled Ukraine, according to the latest figures from the United Nations. The majority, some 2.3 million, have entered Poland. Ukrainian officials say Russia is still shelling Kiev and Chernihiv, despite promising to reduce military attacks on those two cities. It follows peace talks in Istanbul, which the Kremlin said produced no major breakthroughs. FSN's Ollie Barrett reports from Riga.
Officials in Chernihiv say Russian attacks there have continued, with more civilian infrastructure destroyed. This after Russia said it would scale back military action in Kiev and Chernihiv to allow peace talks to make progress. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says President Putin plainly can't be trusted. Fighting has intensified in eastern Ukraine, and Kiev and its allies believe any removal of focus from the Kiev and Chernihiv areas would actually be so Moscow can concentrate more resources on the east of the country. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says there was nothing very promising from the peace talks in Turkey.
Bruce Willis is to give up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. The announcement was made by his family on social media, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
In a post on Instagram, the action star's daughter said he'd been diagnosed with aphasia, which is impacting his cognitive abilities, and as a result he would be stepping away from a career that has meant so much to him. Aphasia is a condition that can affect people's ability to communicate and is usually caused by damage to the brain, like a stroke. 52-year-old Willis rose to fame in the 80s after starring in the Die Hard movies. According to Variety, his films have grossed over $5 billion around the world.
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, estimates that 400 million pupils worldwide are still affected by COVID-19 school closures. UNICEF says classrooms in 23 countries remain partially or fully closed. The UNICEF Executive Director, Catherine Russell, says that school-aged children have become the hidden casualties of the pandemic. The United States plans to end its use of a pandemic-era border policy known as Title 42 that allows officials to turn migrants away from the US-Mexico border based on public health concerns, as FSN's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The Biden administration plans to lift an emergency health order that has restricted immigration into the US at land borders. Title 42 is used by Border Control to turn people away because of concerns of the spread of coronavirus in immigration detention centres. But border officials are concerned that without the rapid turn-back policy, they may be overwhelmed with migrants. Homeland Security officials have contingency plans in managing as many as 18,000 encounters a day at the border, with the policy change likely to take effect in late May. Caroline Malone, Washington.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We're going to talk today about a place we rarely mention, the Solomon Islands, out in the Pacific Ocean. They're making news this week because they are planning to go ahead with a security pact with China, despite the fact that it's causing fury in Australia, New Zealand and the United States. A draft agreement revealed this week would allow Beijing to send security and naval deployments to the islands, stoking Western anxieties that the move will destabilise the region. FSN's Beijing Bureau Chief Patrick Falk tells us more about what the island's Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare has been saying.
Well, speaking in Parliament on Tuesday, he said there was no intention to ask China to build a military base in the Solomon Islands, but he added that the leaked document was a draft and wouldn't share any details on the content of the deal. So that could very well raise a further alarm, really, among the likes of Australia and New Zealand and the US, who already expressed concern after the leak showed it would cover Chinese Navy vessels. On Monday, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said in particular that she saw little reason for the need to have China's presence in the region and that it could lead to the militarization of the Pacific.
And the Australians are now urging the governments of Fiji and Papua New Guinea to try and talk the Solomon Islands out of it. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, more than 4 million people are now estimated to have fled Ukraine, according to figures from the United Nations. Ukrainian officials say Russia is still shelling Kiev and Chernihiv despite promises to reduce attacks on the cities. Peace talks in Istanbul have produced, the Kremlin says, no major breakthroughs. And actor Bruce Willis is giving up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
Hamburglar urges a Senate subcommittee to rubble. This is Doyle Redland reporting. Hamburger advocate and convicted felon Hamburglar denounced a prison system he called rubble as he testified before the Senate subcommittee on penal reform. Hamburglar, convicted in 1998 of breaking and entering a McDonald's hamburger franchise in South Beloit, Wisconsin, and currently serving a sentence of 3 to 5 years, made this impassioned plea before being interrupted by U.S. Senator Bob Smith of Rhode Island.
Certainly there is room for improvement in our prison system, but I would hardly call the current situation rubble.
After delivering his message to the subcommittee, Hamburglar was promptly placed in chains and returned to prison to serve out the remainder of his sentence in solitary confinement. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. Phones are open here if you want to join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And Aria.
And Bonnie.
There's been a lot of news ever since the Ukraine invasion or conflict or whatever you want to call it. On the money side of things, looking at what's going on with the price of oil, who's selling it to who, how these arrangements are being changed, and some people are predicting that this is the beginning of the end for the dominance of the dollar on the global market. I'm not so quick to jump to that conclusion. I would like to see that happen, and maybe this truly will be the beginning of that, if indeed what let's say the Russian government gang is saying actually turns out to be true, and that is that they intend to only take rubles in payment for Russian oil from what they're calling unfriendly countries, and that would include the European Union member states and the United States, Japan, I think South Korea, and maybe one or two others.
It would certainly be interesting if that's the case. I mean, if it does lead to the downfall of the USD, or at least the USD losing its status as the reserve currency of the world, because I'm not sure that the American economy can actually survive that.
Why not?
Because so much of the value of the dollar is built on the willingness of other nations to accept the USD as payment for stuff.
That's true.
And I'm not sure China would still be willing to accept it as payment for stuff if they can't use it, right? It's the same issue we run into with cryptocurrency, not you and I lately, but with cryptocurrency and gold backs and stuff like that. It's people like the idea, and they may want to accept the currency, but they have no use for it, so they can't go spend it anywhere. So why would they accept Bitcoin as payment or gold as payment?
Non-KYC crypto debit cards.
KYC stands for Know Your Customer, and there is a crypto debit card that I guess is being worked on that wouldn't require Know Your Customer, and that's a whole other story, Bonnie, but maybe at some point we'll talk about that. I know that you're keeping your eye on that development. It's not here yet. There's like an online version of it, apparently.
I think there are at least some other one other than Dash Direct that is available now, because I saw...
Without Know Your Customer?
Well, Naomi Brockwell posted today about crypto debit cards, and she said there are even non-KYC options
Oh,
so
plural.
It wasn't like an article, or else I would have clicked on it. But
yeah, I'll have to check that out because I'm curious to know what that's about. But that's a whole other story. But yeah, you're right, Aria. It will be harder for the dollar to maintain in a situation like this, where one of the major suppliers, I believe somebody told me that Russia was the number 2, U.S. is the number 1, Russia's the number 2 oil supplier on the planet. So when the number 2 oil...
And isn't that absurd that the United States is importing oil from Russia while it's the largest oil producer in the world?
It doesn't make any sense.
Where does ours go then?
The U.S. exports oil to other countries,
right,
including Russia, and it imports oil from other countries, including Russia. When I first heard this, I thought, there's no way that's true. That has to be a misunderstanding. But I looked into it, and no, as it turns out, that's 100% true.
It's a bizarre, shell game of contracts and obligations or whatever.
It's super weird, man. Someone's lying. Someone's manipulating large amounts of money, and the people are not benefiting from it. That much is certain.
So first up, a story from RT.com, the website that most of the Western governments in the world don't want you to read. And that is that India is ready to bypass the dollar in trade with Russia, they say. A mechanism allowing the switch to domestic currencies is expected to be operational this week. They say it'll be a system allowing direct ruble payments. So the rupee is the India currency and the ruble is the Russian one.
And that had me confused for several weeks. I was like, India's doing this thing, but yeah, rupee and ruble.
Say that between Russia and India could be launched this week, according to the president of the Federation of Indian Export Organizations, FIO. He told CNBC on Wednesday the arrangement would allow India and Russia to carry out financial operations bypassing the U.S. dollar. Russia is effectively blocked from using U.S. currency due to Western sanctions over the conflict in Ukraine. According to the official, the Indian government is working on a proposal to allow up to 5 nationalized Indian banks to be engaged in the rupee-ruble trade mechanism. And discussions between the central bank governor, the finance minister, and the banks on the matter have already been held. The arrangement would let Indian exporters continue doing business with Russia despite the sanctions banning, among other things, international payment mechanisms in the country, such as SWIFT. It would also allow India to continue to buy Russian energy exports and other goods.
I know a lot of Americans are looking down on India, feeling like India betrayed their friendship with the United States or whatever, but India is sort of neutral between the United States or the NATO blocs and Ukraine and Russia and all that. They don't really have a dog in the fight, just like the United States doesn't really have a dog in the fight between Pakistan and India. Right.
Yeah.
If India is betraying the United States over continuing to work with Russia, then the United States betrayed India long ago by continuing to work with Pakistan.
Well, I suspect that the people of India get a lot more benefit from Russian oil than they do American oil.
They're certainly a lot closer, and it probably benefits them more to have, their next door neighbor on their good side than the country almost literally on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And is it true that Russia is going to start backing the ruble with gold?
No, I don't believe that for a moment. I think that was Peakless Mountaineer who was suggesting that. There was a news story where they were buying gold, and of course the Russian government has been buying gold for many years prior to the Ukraine situation in preparation for, a rainy day. But just because they're buying gold doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden back their central bank currency.
But there was also this other story that said that India and Russia are going to create a new world currency system, and it would involve Russian gold.
It would be a smart move. I don't think that's likely because central banks have moved away from gold. And they realize that this limits them in their ability to wage war and, inflate the currency and control their populations. But it would be a smart move if Russia wants to establish economic dominance now and for the next 100 years at least, have a gold standard.
That's not going to happen. I mean, there's just
I know
no
it's not
reason.
going to happen, but even I could get behind a Russian currency that was actually backed by gold.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people would be very excited to know that one government's currency had all of a sudden become backed, but it's that's just not the way of the central banks.
It's not, but it would be the reserve currency of the world for the next century at least if a country actually had the courage to do that.
It would
be foresight.
It would be an interesting move, but then again, you were pointing out before, how are you going to fund the wars?
Right. I'm not saying they would do it. Yeah. I'm saying they should.
Right. It would be a very interesting move if that happened. According to the Indian minister, the Indian economy could profit from sanctions that Russia is facing as they give Indian exporters an opportunity to expand on the Russian market. It's like, all right, well, if you don't want McDonald's and you don't want all these other American companies want to pull out, which many of them have, even though they're not prohibited from doing business in Russia. There's not a sanction against American corporations from doing business in Russia at this point. It's just that they want to signal how woke they are and that, oh, well, we're with Ukraine. Like apparently Samsung is now removing the letter Z from its model numbers.
Oh, my God.
What does Z have to do with Russia? I've been seeing stuff.
They've been painting it on their tanks. I don't know why. I assume it's got something to do with Zelensky.
I don't know. I'm not going to jump to a conclusion, but yeah, it's somehow associated with Russia, so now it's not going to be in the Samsung model numbers.
It seems weird that it would have to do with Zelensky because there's this Russian YouTuber I was following, and he said he went to Georgia, and he said he's been feeling really not at home in Moscow anymore. He said he doesn't like seeing big, giant things painted with the big, giant letter Z on it. And it's just, that's kind of weird, right?
I'm sure someone could look it up and find out what the answer is to that. But you know, this is a big opportunity. If American companies are bailing out of Russia, and almost all of the big ones are, we looked at a list last week that it's the number of companies that are staying there is very, very small.
What I don't get is why...
That's a huge opportunity.
Like, the Russian owners of Burger King, why did they comply with this, right? Because these are franchises just like they why not, if Burger King corporate's like, no, you have to close. Okay, well, rename your business Burger King Queen. What are they going to do, sue you?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Russian courts aren't going to uphold intellectual property law in these cases. The number here is 603-283-6160. You can take control of the airwaves and bring up whatever's on your mind, and you can weigh in on this, what they're calling now a New World Financial Order that Moscow says is coming.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to MyMagicMud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. MyMagicMud.com, FTL20. Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com.
Email is easy, instant, and free, and that can be real embarrassing. Email lacks the eye contact and body language you get in face-to-face conversation, or the tone of voice and other nuance you hear in a telephone conversation. Email is just words, often few words. We're all smothering in spam, so we often reply in terse fashion that's easy to misunderstand. And email doesn't cost you a postage stamp, and it lacks the deliberation vacation time it'd take to walk to the snail mail box. So it's easy to succumb to the "oh yeah" stimulus response trap. When in doubt, don't snap back at snippy messages you get. You may have mistaken the sender's intent. And unless you're sending AOL to AOL, there's no unsend. For more tips on critical communication skills for the way things are now, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Is a new world financial order coming soon? Well, in Moscow, that's what they're saying. And I want to believe it. I really do want to see the end of the dominance of the dollar. I am by no means a fan of any central bank currency. Let me make that clear. I don't think the ruble is good. I don't think the yuan is good, or the yen, or the rupee, or any of these things. As long as it's issued by a central bank and it doesn't have any backing to it, then it's garbage to me.
I mean, that's true, but we know that the USD has used its status as the world's reserve currency to wage war pretty much for the last century, unending, ceaseless war, and killed, millions upon millions of people.
Sure.
Losing that reserve status is, I would prefer a different currency have the opportunity to have that reserve status, simply because the U.S. has shown that it can't be trusted with that power.
Well, none of them can.
None of them can be, right? But the U.S. has definitively proven that it can't.
And I don't think that you're going to see an end to endless war from the United States simply because the reserve currency status ends. What you and by no means am I expert economist or anything like that, but the fact that so many people around the world use the dollar, including governments and also individuals, because there's some countries that don't even have their own fiat currencies, right? So like El Salvador is an example of this, where they don't print their own. They did it one time, I believe, and then they stopped, and now they just use the dollar, and they've added Bitcoin late last year. So there's a ton of places around the planet that use the dollar, and if that reliance upon the dollar goes down and other countries start buying oil in the Russian ruble, and there's I think it was Saudi Arabia was talking with China about doing oil sales in yuan. So if we start seeing a sort of multi-currency approach to these major purchases going on, it will lessen the influence of the dollar, and that means the dollar, these other currencies may rise against the dollar on the world market. That could also mean that the U.S. government, when they print money, they won't have as much out there in the world and the rest of the world to dilute into, right? So like when they print out dollars, right? Like that money goes somewhere. It goes to the politically connected people. It goes to the people that know the politicians, the military-industrial complex, the Pfizers, the what do they call it, the medical-industrial complex. So all these politically connected businesses, they're the ones that get the payouts first,
right?
And then of course the money funnels down through to the people.
I think trickles down is the word they like to use.
Yeah, it trickles down to the population, and of course, increasing the money supply, as we know. result in higher prices. So I think that if the money is focused more in the United States than it is around the rest of the planet, you'll probably see inflation go up faster within the United States because you don't have the rest of the planet using the dollars to sort of dilute the inflation. Does that make any sense?
It does. It's not going to be pretty for the average American who's already, as we talked about, the average American's already living paycheck to paycheck and drowning in debt and all of this other stuff. It's not going to be pretty if these things come to pass and the U.S. loses its currency as being the world's reserve currency. The average American is going to suffer exponentially more than they are right now. They're going to look at that gas pump and they're going to think, man, I sure do miss when it was
$4.50?
Yeah.
I think that they can stand to get a little less comfortable with the heinous things that their government does to people that aren't only them and their immediate family, though. So,
well, the good news is if you are concerned about what's going to happen, you can take steps to change your situation. Certainly, it's harder now than ever before, especially if you're one of those people that's living paycheck to paycheck, to break out and purchase other things like gold or silver or cryptocurrency or something else, real estate, something else that might, and of course real estate could be in a bubble and might be crashing. Who knows, right? Like we can't make
predictions.
At
least have a place to go instead of just a bunch of dollars that melt.
Let's go to your calls and thoughts. Dave Ridley calling from Colorado from Ridley Report. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so you guys must be a little bit familiar with Victoria Nuland, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine.
Never heard of her.
Okay, so she is like neck deep in this whole business that's going on, and I guess a couple of weeks ago, she's now a high-ranking State Department official, and a couple of weeks ago, she was on TV, or in front of Congress actually, and on TV, busily admitting the truth of Russian claims that there are Ukrainian biolabs with U.S. involvement. And while she was busy admitting that, after all the media had been told to say it was false, after she
they were misleading, as I understand it, right? It was that the United States military, what they admitted to doing was doing defensive biological research effectively, while the Russians were saying, no, that you were trying to make a biological weapon. So I don't think that.
Yeah, how do you have defensive?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think anyone in the West ever actually denied the existence of these facilities. They just said, "Oh no, we don't have a military budget. We have a defense budget. We don't have a biological weapons facility. We have a biological weapons defense facility."
Well, keep in mind that they call the military the Department of Defense.
Oh, I know. Yeah, they're full of it.
So we know what they mean when they say defense. It means killing the rest of the world with insane violence.
Because defensive bioweapons worked out so well when the U.S. got involved in it in Wuhan, right? But anyway, so she's. By the way, the guy that does the news during your breaks, the news organization that does the pro-government news during your breaks. The guy from his little desk in New York or whatever claimed that the Russian claims were false. Because, of course, obviously, he's a weapons inspector and has been all over Ukraine. So I heard it while I was on hold on one of your shows. I heard one of the most egregious examples of just pretending like all claims are false that we don't like, right? But anyway.
What's that news agency called? I always forget their name.
Front page news?
Feature story news. Thank you, Bonnie.
Oh, God, they're awful. But anyway.
Well, you know what? It was them or Fox. And Fox is awful, too. And these guys do a commercial-free newscast every day. Or not every day, but multiple times a day. And it was great when we had Daryl Perry's newscast that he did once a day. And he stopped doing that a few years back. So, unfortunately, there is no pro-liberty newscast out there.
Oh, wow, I didn't know he did that.
Anyway, while she was admitting that, she also admitted something else. And I don't know if you this was on the Ron Paul Liberty report. Something else that's even of more interest to Americans. She said, quote, "We also work with the tech companies to try to take down false news stories." I'm sorry. We also work with the tech companies to try to take down false stories, unquote. So she basically just at a swipe, okay, so there's this argument that, okay, YouTube or something like that, it's a private company, so they can take you down if they want. They're just acting on their property rights. Okay, she just threw that that argument right out the window. She's saying the government is doing this stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, this is not news. We talked about this months ago when the White House spokesperson, Jen Psaki, was out there like, we tell Facebook which stories to pull down.
Facebook admitted that they were already working with the state before the COVID story went worldwide back in like February and January. They were under contract
2020?
In 2020 from the CDC. Thanks, Ridley. Appreciate hearing from you tonight. The number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. Yeah, big tech is totally in the pocket of the state, and you got to do something to get out from those systems. There are alternatives. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. More than 4 million people have now fled Ukraine, according to the latest figures from the United Nations. The majority, some 2.3 million, have entered Poland. Ukrainian officials say Russia is still shelling Kiev and Chernihiv, despite promising to reduce military attacks on those two cities. It follows peace talks in Istanbul, which the Kremlin said produced no major breakthroughs. FSN's Ollie Barrett reports from Riga.
Officials in Chernihiv say Russian attacks there have continued, with more civilian infrastructure destroyed. This after Russia said it would scale back military action in Kiev and Chernihiv to allow peace talks to make progress. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says President Putin plainly can't be trusted. Fighting has intensified in eastern Ukraine, and Kiev and its allies believe any removal of focus from the Kiev and Chernihiv areas would actually be so Moscow can concentrate more resources on the east of the country. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says there was nothing very promising from the peace talks in Turkey.
Bruce Willis is to give up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. The announcement was made by his family on social media, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
In a post on Instagram, the action star's daughter said he'd been diagnosed with aphasia, which is impacting his cognitive abilities, and as a result he would be stepping away from a career that has meant so much to him. Aphasia is a condition that can affect people's ability to communicate and is usually caused by damage to the brain, like a stroke. 52-year-old Willis rose to fame in the 80s after starring in the Die Hard movies. According to Variety, his films have grossed over $5 billion around the world.
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, estimates that 400 million pupils worldwide are still affected by COVID-19 school closures. UNICEF says classrooms in 23 countries remain partially or fully closed. The UNICEF Executive Director, Catherine Russell, says that school-aged children have become the hidden casualties of the pandemic. The United States plans to end its use of a pandemic-era border policy known as Title 42 that allows officials to turn migrants away from the US-Mexico border based on public health concerns, as FSN's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The Biden administration plans to lift an emergency health order that has restricted immigration into the US at land borders. Title 42 is used by Border Control to turn people away because of concerns of the spread of coronavirus in immigration detention centres. But border officials are concerned that without the rapid turn-back policy, they may be overwhelmed with migrants. Homeland Security officials have contingency plans in managing as many as 18,000 encounters a day at the border, with the policy change likely to take effect in late May. Caroline Malone, Washington.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, phones open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. We're talking about the world money situation, which now Moscow is saying, get ready for the New World Financial Order. One of the stories about that coming from RT.com, where India and the Russian and Indian government gangs are currently talking about a deal which would allow a rupee-ruble trade mechanism to bypass the SWIFT international banking cartel. Because as you know, probably, the SWIFT has restrictions, sanctions have been put onto SWIFT preventing, I don't think it's all Russian banks at this point, unless that's changed. I have not been paying close attention to that, but certainly the major ones, the ones that are tied in with the state and the big, Russian oligarchs, etc.
This whole thing has been a really nice check on the American ego. And I think the ramifications of that are still going to be dropping down for the next year or two at least. But, America's like, oh, we can completely crush Russia. We don't need them. We can just completely cut them off. And it's like, oh, as it turns out, the rest of the world doesn't need us nearly as much as we thought.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an important thing that needs to happen, even if the Ukraine conflict ends tomorrow, because they are in the midst of ongoing peace talks, and apparently Russia has withdrawn from Kyiv, supposedly, because they're hearing good things, what they're calling, quote, practical. The talks have moved into a practical area or something like that. That was what was reported yesterday. Anyway, if all of a sudden the Ukraine thing, the violence stops, and the sanctions get lifted, I hope that Russia will continue to move forward with all of these plans of creating these alternative payment rails.
Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? They know now that, if the United States wants to, it'll just say, no, we're not doing business with you anymore. And Russia's like, oh, well, we need to have alternatives in place. Just like it would be insane if suddenly the U.S. dollar collapsed and, we relied on crypto and gold to go about our lives. And then suddenly the USD was back at full strength. And we're like, oh, yeah, I guess we don't need that gold and crypto anymore.
Yeah, that would be pretty pathetic to go running back, crawling on hands and knees back to the dollar hegemony.
And it is annoying that Russia isn't just going, we're going to start a new world currency order. Oh, and there's already this amazing thing put in place called cryptocurrency, so we're going to use it. No, they have to create another crappier version.
Right, because they have to be in control.
Yep.
They are open to the possibility of Bitcoin.
They did
I understand it.
Yeah, they did say they would accept Bitcoin payments for energy.
Oh.
So whether
that's big.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Whether or not any countries will actually use Bitcoin to pay, I mean, they should. They do point out here, I don't know if it's in this story or a different one. The one I've got in front of me is about the India-Russia deal, but that it's complex, to get these banking systems to work with one another, and it's a huge hassle. That's one of the reasons why on the 31st, Putin had ordered that by the 31st, and that's, tomorrow, that they were only going to accept the ruble for energy exports, for oil and gas from the so-called unfriendly countries. But now they're having to walk that back simply because of the technical difficulty of making that happen, whatever the bureaucratic changes are that they have to go through, of interfacing with their banks and talking with the bureaucrats and, passing around whatever stupid paperwork that they need to do. They can't get it done by tomorrow, so it's going to take some time.
Yeah, but you just made me realize that we're talking about what if the U.S. loses its reserve currency. The U.S. has already lost that status.
Has it?
I mean, clearly, Russia is no longer accepting it. Because you got to ask, Russia's only going to take the rupee and the ruble as payment now. What were they accepting before?
The dollar.
The dollar.
Well, they haven't done it yet, though. That's the thing. It was supposed to go officially tomorrow, and now they're saying we need more time.
They need more time to work out the kinks, sure,
yes.
But they have no intention of continuing to accept dollars. And I think the ramifications of this are going to be major, and I think they're going to be felt throughout the United States They're going to make the last few years of government printing look like nothing.
Yeah. Back to the story here from RT. Quote, export to Russia is not much, only in agriculture and pharmacy products. This is someone from India commenting. Now that the whole of the West is banning Russia, there will be a lot of opportunities for Indian firms to enter Russia. So this is, a business opportunity for fledgling businesses there in India that have been waiting for the opportunity to get into a major market, a major global market. Russia is one of the top 20, global markets out there. It's huge. It's a huge country. India's finance ministry and the Reserve Bank of India have not yet commented on the new trade arrangement. Unlike the U.S. and the EU, India has not criticized Russia over its military operation in Ukraine and has abstained from condemning Moscow during the recent UN voting rounds. When asked whether India's continued commerce with Russia would draw Western ire, the spokesman said his country had taken a neutral stand on the situation in Ukraine. Quote, the government will take into account all the factors and is playing it very carefully, he said. India exported $3.3 billion worth of goods to Russia in 2021, including pharmaceutical, tea, and coffee products. In terms of imports, India bought $6.9 billion worth of Russian products, including arms and defense goods, mineral resources, fertilizers, metals, diamonds, and other precious stones. They also import Russian oil, which we figured, with recent media reports stating the country's major oil refiner has now stepped up purchases of Russian crude over the past month, and they're also reportedly buying raw materials or considering buying raw materials from Russia for fertilizer production. So, yeah, this is going to be good for business in the country of India.
What I think is really neat is that the only way out of this now for the United States to keep its currency as being the world's reserve currency is to get involved in the war with Ukraine and Russia, to declare war on Russia. That's the only card the United States could play now, and it can't play that.
That's not going to get them out of it. That's just going to call for more money printing.
It could put in... Well, yeah, but they don't care about that. They just want to keep the United States as the world currency. That way they can continue printing all the money. The ramifications won't be felt here at home.
So
you're
saying
they can continue all of their nonsense abroad.
The idea would be to go to war with Russia to crush them in theory and force them back into the dollar system.
Yeah, and they're not going to do that.
No,
but they have
a
nuclear bomb.
Yeah, they have many nuclear weapons in Russia and a humongous landmass with 140 million people.
We can't even get libertarians to move to New Hampshire to be libertarians in their lifetime, but I don't think the American military could survive fighting in Russia in the winter.
I mean, they can't even take on Afghanistan, right?
Well, they weren't trying to. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, they were sparring matches by the American military. They were meant to be fought, not won.
I see what you're saying.
They were meant to keep the military sharp, to test out their military's new gadgets and their new toys and make sure that everything worked at the click of a button the way they needed it to work. In preparation for some sort of major conflict, but they can't. They wouldn't win the war with Russia.
There's just no way. I get what you're saying about the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I mean, if they wanted to win, they could have just dropped a few nukes on Afghanistan.
If they wanted to drop nukes, yes, they could have. But to take over a country, you can't nuke the place.
They didn't want to take it. They didn't want to take it over, though.
As far as I heard from my dad, when he was in Iraq, it was to put a new government in power. Like they were taking out one and they were putting another one in purposely. That was like
and then
the mission.
Hang around, basically.
Yeah, because the one they put in was incompetent. It couldn't do jumping jacks and basic stuff like that.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I will never forget about the Afghan jumping jacks video, ever. Like, whenever I feel depressed, that's what I watch to feel good about myself. I'm like, man, I could only bend over and touch my toes for like 3 minutes earlier. And I was like, but that's okay because I can still do a jumping jack.
So the ex-Russian president, this is the guy, I guess, who was in before Putin, Dmitry Medvedev, has spoken out saying the U.S. and the EU have tarnished their reputation by freezing Russia's central bank reserves. And he's calling this a new financial order. A new world financial order will be negotiated, and the West won't have the main say in it anymore, he says. The, quote, hellish, unquote, sanctions imposed on Russia by the U.S., EU, and their allies over the conflict in Ukraine have failed to cripple the country, but are instead returning to the West like a boomerang, said the former president, who is now the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council. Indeed, speaking of boomerangs, the Russian ruble has come back. It's not completely back to where it was prior to the invasion, but it had a pretty big dip after the invasion, and it's mostly recovered since then when compared to the dollar. There's more coming up here, and you can share your thoughts with us. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
Trisha, you deserve the forgiveness. Absolutely. I know that it feels like you've made some mistakes, and you know what? You have made mistakes. Now, it doesn't feel like...
Who hasn't?
Right. A, it doesn't make any sense for you to continue to beat yourself up. You're not going to get anything out of it. Nobody else is going to get anything out of it.
That's
but
true.
B, you would give the forgiveness to somebody else. You deserve that forgiveness for yourself.
And only you can give it to yourself.
I mean,
and I think forgiveness is about moving on for yourself, being able to come to a position in your own mind where you're ready to just accept what went wrong and try your best to do better in the future. And find self-assess and find areas that you can improve. And I think, bringing forgiveness to the table for yourself is one of the most important things that you can do.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern. Live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And Aria.
And Bonnie.
Sorry, I was looking up something for Bonnie. I found you something. I'll share it with you during the break.
Okay. Now you're teasing the listeners.
Well, it's about it. Listen, Bonnie had a question about people and their grammatical choices.
Old people.
Let's talk about it then.
Old people and their grammatical choices.
And it's
the
apparently
ellipsis, the three dots for those that don't know what an ellipsis is.
And it's supposed to be like a placeholder for like when you remove something or
Correct.
when you shorten a sentence or something like that. When there's a bunch that you omit because it's not necessary to the structure of the sentence, that's when you use the ellipsis. And Bonnie evidently has observed that people of an elderly persuasion tend to misuse them and overuse them. And I've never really paid attention to that.
I don't know if is it an elderly thing or just a person on the internet thing?
The thing is, I didn't know that it was a thing. Like, I didn't know that people said that. I've just always noticed it. And Arya brought up this website where people are discussing why do old people do that. And it's seriously a thing. I've just noticed, like, my grandparents will text me, "Hi, Bonnie, ... And you'll be like, are you mad at me? What is that supposed to mean?
I wouldn't think anything about it because, like, my grandmother will, at random, I think by accident, create a completely new Facebook profile with no picture and then then comment a completely random thing about me, something about my birthday or whatever in all caps. I mean, old people, and I don't mean all people over 50 or whatever. I'm talking like an 85-year-old, I don't know how old my grandmother is, but like an 85-year-old grandmother, completely incompetent at using technology, right? So ... or ... comma, exclamation point. I wouldn't bat an eye about seeing any of that from, an older person.
I certainly wouldn't jump to a conclusion that somebody was angry if they use an ellipsis inappropriate, in an incorrect manner.
Well, okay, if a young person that you are friends with, like Arya, messaged you, "Hi, Ian, ... What are you doing today, ... No question mark, would you be like, what's up with her? She's acting all sinister and secretive."
I don't know. I think you're reading way too much into it. The idea that it's somehow sinister or secretive. It's just probably someone who, like you said, they don't know what the ellipsis necessarily means in the traditional English
It's
usage.
like they want to use a comma, but they use an ellipsis all the time.
It seems like a pause thing, right? Because like sometimes...
it does have that informal usage of also being a pause because it would be incorrect to put a comma in a certain place. So, but you do want to pause there for emphasis or whatever, so you use an ellipsis instead. I've certainly done that, but what the examples that you're talking about are people like saying, "Why ... do old people ... text ... like this ... question mark." And you're right. I've seen stuff like that. It never occurred to me that this is old people or anything. I just see it. I'm like, okay, that's someone who has some peculiar method of typing.
They are probably typing in a way that they feel like they're speaking. That's just a stretch on my part.
I've always been a complete grammar Nazi, to be honest. Grammar just made total sense to me, like, since I was young.
Even on text messaging?
And no, on text messaging, I don't type completely perfectly, but I will judge people for extremely ridiculous things, like the wrong there, or your there, and yours, and things like that.
I silently judge them. I don't like call them out on it.
Me either.
But if they don't know the difference between like they are and this belongs to them as in there, then yeah, I'm going to judge you for that, dude. We learned that
basic stuff.
Yeah, we learned that in like the 3rd grade. You're a functioning adult. You should know the difference by now. You should know the difference between you are and like this thing is physically yours. It belongs to you.
And it just makes total sense to me. And somebody who's really good at math might completely judge me silently if I'm like, "Oh, what is something minus something?" So it's not like I think I'm better than them, but it's just something that I don't understand how other people don't understand. And
well, I would silently judge if you're like, "Oh, what is 11 minus 4?" Right? And you like broke out an abacus or whatever. You just guessed, it's about 6, right? Yeah, and that's the level that we're dealing with when we talk about you are and your and their. It is that basic level of understanding stuff that we also learn in the 2nd and 3rd grade that people should just know by now.
I'm looking back just to see in the chat room tonight, just to see who has used the ellipsis or the more than an ellipsis, where NM, who said something nice about you earlier tonight, Bonnie, says, "Use Bitcoin, don't use it," and then several dots. I don't know
and that's the other
many.
thing. Sometimes they'll use 4 dots, and it's like, that's not even an ellipsis. That's nothing.
Yeah, I think you're being way
how
too
worked up she is.
Yeah, I think you're being way too concerned with people's use of the dots.
I gotta agree with her on that. That when it's more than 3, it does.
It's an extended pause. Now you know someone is not using the ellipsis. They're not. They probably don't. Like, they're not using the ellipsis to indicate that they've taken some sort of statement out.
They think that the more dots means a longer pause, and that's even dumber than not knowing what an ellipsis is.
I wouldn't call that dumb. I think that that's just...
I would call it unnecessary, right? Like, I used to write for this website called Cubed 3, and it was owned by these British guys who, the editors would take, every time you used the word while, and they would replace it with whilst. They would take off the E and they would put ST instead. And that is the most completely superfluous ST. There is nothing conveyed by the word whilst that is not, except pretentiousness, that is not conveyed by the word while. And I called them out on this and they did finally stop doing it. But that's the same issue here. There's nothing conveyed by 5 periods that isn't conveyed by 3.
Well, if it's 6 periods,
correct.
If it's 6 periods, you know it's twice as long of a pause.
But how long is a pause? This isn't a quantified amount here.
We don't know how long a 3-period pause is.
It would be weird to pause for twice as long as a normal pause if somebody was just talking to you.
But it's still just one pause, right?
Yes.
One extended pause. Another example actually came right up after it. David Fox says, you can't use Bitcoin at all, ellipsis. It's useless unless someone wants to exchange it for something that is useful.
And see, if he said...
That's incorrect.
If he said, you can't use Bitcoin at all, period, I would just think a person saying a statement. But when somebody says, you can't use Bitcoin at all, ... it sounds like, I've been burned before.
But
this is serious.
That's a good point. That is a complete sentence. You can't use Bitcoin at all. It's a factually incorrect sentence, but that's a complete sentence, right? But he didn't punctuate it he didn't capitalize the first letter.
No.
And he didn't just use a period at the end of it. None of these comments are complete sentences. And like when I type on YouTube or Twitch or something, I'm going to type in a complete sentence because I'm not an illiterate 3-year-old and I know how to do that, right? But most people don't do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in the minority.
Yeah, there's something about the informal approach that people like about the internet, and that's why they don't capitalize the first letter of the sentence.
That's
why
it's lazy.
They seem hesitant to actually complete a sentence properly.
And I'm more...
Like it scares them.
I'm more okay with that, just informal writing that gets the point across, than when people stylize their writing for no reason. Like, people who capitalize every letter, seriously... drive me so crazy.
You mean
so it's like a
every
headline?
Word.
Oh, every word. Okay. Sorry, of every in a whole sentence.
The first letter of every word.
It's so weird. Like, why did that start, and where did that come from, and why would that be cool? It's like people do that to look cool, and I don't get how it's cool.
Wow, I don't recall seeing many people do that, but I believe you that people do that.
I've seen it here and there, but I mean, not like a pervasive thing. I've certainly seen the ellipsis thing more, and the just complete failure to make a correct sentence.
The ellipsis is very common, for sure.
And it's like the person doesn't even know that would be correct to end it with a period. For some reason, they must not know that, or else they wouldn't have taken the extra time to put 2 more dots.
Well, it would not be correct to end it with a period because the first letter of the sentence wasn't capitalized.
Oh, well, I can't see it from here.
So maybe there's some connection there where we find that people are more likely to use ellipses when they don't capitalize the first letter of the sentence.
So they're just bad at grammar.
They're just bad at making complete sentences.
I am pleased to see that there are some actual complete sentences from some of our chat participants in here. So.
Nice. That's good. But that's above average at the very
least. Right, that's refreshing.
So these people say it's not difficult to identify an old person online just by the way they write.
Interesting.
If you know they're old, I think this is probably a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not self-fulfilling prophecy, but confirmation bias, right? Like, so you know this person's old, so when they do these things that you recognize as an old person,
boomer.
you're like, yeah. Like my grandmother randomly saying things in all caps or commenting, Happy Valentine's Day on a picture from 6 years ago or whatever.
Okay, but wait.
It's like, okay, yes, old person.
All right, so how do young people insert a pause into their, like, how do they show a pause in their chats?
I'll tell you how, and it's even worse. They break a single sentence across 16 or 17 different comments. So they're like, here's 4 words, they press enter. Here's 6 words, they press enter. Here's 3 more words, enter.
How about the one where they put a period after each word? Like to emphasize each word, like,
I am telling you. Yeah.
Bad. That's kind of a pause, right? That's kind of a
It
pause.
somehow doesn't bother me as bad because you know that they're doing it on purpose to make a point instead of
the person doing the ellipsis is doing it on purpose.
No, they just don't know that it's wrong.
All right, your thoughts are welcome at 603-283-6160. You can join us here on Internet Etiquette or whatever's on your mind. Maybe it's Russia too. Whatever. Free Talk Live. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The US says advisors have misled Russian President Vladimir Putin about the progress of the war in Ukraine. American intelligence also suggests that advisors have not revealed the full extent of the Western sanctions' impact on the Russian economy. White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield detailed the US assessment.
Putin is being misinformed by his advisors about how badly the Russian military is performing and how the Russian economy is being crippled by sanctions because his senior advisors are too afraid to tell him the truth.
The UN says more than 4 million people have now fled Ukraine. The majority, some 2.3 million, have entered Poland. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences says actor Will Smith was asked to leave the Oscars after he slapped Chris Rock, but refused. The Academy has now initiated disciplinary proceedings against Smith. The US says it plans to end its use of a pandemic-era border policy known as Title 42 that allows officials to turn migrants away from the US-Mexico border based on public health concerns, as FSN's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The Biden administration plans to lift an emergency health order that has restricted immigration into the US at land borders. Title 42 is used by Border Control to turn people away because of concerns of the spread of coronavirus in immigration detention centres. But border officials are concerned that without the rapid turn-back policy, they may be overwhelmed with migrants. Homeland Security officials have contingency plans in managing as many as 18,000 encounters a day at the border, with the policy change likely to take effect in late May. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Bruce Willis is giving up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. He's suffering from aphasia, a condition that affects a person's ability to communicate. The announcement was made by his family on social media. US markets closed down on Wednesday as oil prices increased once again. Investors reacted to signs that progress in the Russia-Ukraine peace talks was waning, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports from New York.
The Dow was down 66 points or 0.2%, while the S&P lost 0.6% after 4 days of gains. And the Nasdaq ended the day 1.2% lower. Ongoing concerns over the war in Ukraine prompted oil prices to rise more than 3% to hit $107 a barrel. It comes after Germany warned it could have to ration natural gas because of a dispute with Russia. Semiconductor firms did poorly, with Nvidia down more than 2% and Micron falling 3% despite releasing a stronger than expected earnings report. Meanwhile, new data showed the labour market in the US continues to do well. Private payrolls rose by 455,000 jobs last month, which was above expectations. Sarah Walton, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We're going to talk today about a place we rarely mention, the Solomon Islands, out in the Pacific Ocean. They're making news this week because they are planning to go ahead with a security pact with China, despite the fact that it's causing fury in Australia, New Zealand and the United States. A draft agreement revealed this week would allow Beijing to send security and naval deployments to the islands, stoking Western anxieties that the move will destabilise the region. FSN's Beijing Bureau Chief Patrick Fock tells us more about what the island's Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare has been saying.
Well, speaking in Parliament on Tuesday, he said there was no intention to ask China to build a military base in the Solomon Islands, but he added that the leaked document was a draft and wouldn't share any details on the content of the deal. So that could very well raise a further alarm, really, among the likes of Australia and New Zealand and the US, who already expressed concern after the leak showed it would cover Chinese Navy vessels. On Monday, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said in particular that she saw little reason for the need to have China's presence in the region and that it could lead to the militarization of the Pacific.
And the Australians are now urging the governments of Fiji and Papua New Guinea to try and talk the Solomon Islands out of it. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, the US says advisors have misled Russian President Vladimir Putin about the progress of the war in Ukraine. The Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences says actor Will Smith was asked to leave the Oscars after he slapped Chris Rock, but refused. And Bruce Willis is giving up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
The CEO of Dollar Tree unveils the long-rumored foil baking pan. A new donor liver complains about the difficulty of working with Lou Reed. And a local couple keeps their marriage together for the sake of no one. We'll keep this as quick and painless as possible. This is The Onion Week in Review. A study published this week in the Journal of Financial Economics found that 83% of gamblers quit right before they would have hit the big one. Researchers confirmed that roughly 8 out of 10 gamblers who walked away from slot machines, poker games, horse races, roulette, and other games were consistently just a single stake away from winning it all, and unknowingly gave up a lifetime of fortune by quitting prematurely.
Our study proved that subjects who closed an online poker session, walked away from a slot machine, or even gave up gambling altogether would have won millions of dollars in the next bet. Also, people who walk away after hitting it big are missing out on a chance to make more money. I mean, when you're hot, you're hot.
In other news, an Asian guy has a separate group of Asian friends, and a vain Galapagos tortoise tries to pass for 90.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. We can get you in. If you dial in at 603-283-6160, you can bring up anything that's on your mind. Here tonight, you've got Ian.
And Arya.
And Bonnie.
Whether you want to comment on the New World Financial Order, as former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, is saying, it's happening now. It's coming soon. He's now the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council. Or you want to weigh in on the debate over the ellipsis. Yes, the 3 dots.
If your pause there, if you want to weigh in on the debate, the ellipsis.
Or you could do a double pause for 6.
And we're talking about the inappropriate or overuse of the ellipsis, and I think that it's, the English language can change over time, right? So like the standard use of the ellipsis was to remove a thing from a statement, right? So like a long quote from, you usually see it used when somebody's quoting like a passage from the law, where they can just cut out a whole bunch that's not relevant and then put an ellipsis in and make it sound like a sentence.
And as I understand it, written language has always been very different from actual spoken language. Like we don't write anywhere near the way we actually speak, right? We constantly speak in incomplete sentences, sentence fragments, all of this stuff. But that's not the way we write. The texting
we didn't. Now we do.
That's what I was getting at. The texting and stuff that people use online and Telegram and on Facebook, that's probably the closest written speech has ever been to actually spoken speech.
Right. Well, I always, one thing that I always do that I judge myself for doing, but I'm not going to stop because it works and I speak like this, is saying, where are you at? I'm like, oh, I know I ended a sentence with a preposition and you're not supposed to do that. I say, where are you at?
Sure, it's quick.
So I go back and forth. I'm like, I know the English language should be allowed to change and live.
Of course, where are you is also 3 words.
They say that about prepositions, but the reality was that was created by like this one American bishop who wanted English to be more like Latin. And
really?
In Latin, it's impossible to end a sentence in a preposition.
It's a stupid rule.
It's a completely stupid rule. And Beavis and Butthead Do America made so much fun of that joke, and it was brilliant. Yeah, and we can't use the sentence they used here on the show, but there was one sentence in there where if you try to recompose that sentence so that it doesn't end in a preposition, you're going to give yourself a headache.
Let's go to Farmer Garrick on the line in Illinois. You're on Free Talk Live. Farmer Garrick. Farmer Garrick, going once. Farmer Garrick going twice. He was there. I'll put him back on hold. Maybe he's in a bad cell. Let's try instead Sam, calling from Ohio. Sam, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. So, Ari, you said last night that you have more gold backs than you did dollars?
At that particular moment in my wallet, yes. I was physically carrying more gold backs than I was dollars. But to be fair, I only had like $8 in actual physical cash on me last night.
Oh. Now, is it real easy to spend gold backs in New Hampshire?
I used them today to buy a pizza, and I used them yesterday to buy 2 burritos. So it depends on where you go, right?
You can get a picture frame, a custom picture frame in Manchester for gold backs. You can possibly get a cow in Croydon for gold backs. You can get all kinds of food for gold backs.
When you're dealing with the people in the Liberty movement, it's almost certain that they're going to take alternatives to the dollar, whether we're talking about cryptocurrency or whether we're talking about gold backs or an ounce of silver. Amongst the community, you're going to find a lot of acceptance. Not quite 100%.
So how do they make change for a gold back?
Yeah, you don't. You round up or you round down.
You can if you want to. I know that the old pho noodle restaurant, formerly known as Pho Keen Great, now changed their name to Funky Noodle in downtown Keene. They do give change for the gold backs there.
See, I'm not a fan of that. I think that's lunacy. I wouldn't pay in one currency and expect my change back in a completely different currency.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that it should be done that way. I like what you're saying, but I understand why businesses do that. Like, for instance, if somebody comes in...
in my mind, it's... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Because in my mind, it seems like if you're going to make change for gold, you do it with silver just because it's precious metal. At least it's a similar-ish currency.
Yeah, I would allow that, right? Like if my order was $18 or whatever, and I handed them, a 5 gold back, and they gave me back $2 in silver, which is what, 1/10 of an ounce or whatever, I would not object to that.
It's getting too complicated.
Yeah.
You cannot expect a cashier who can barely count to begin with.
What is 11 minus 7? It's like 6, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you cannot expect the help to be able to figure out, oh, you've given me this amount of gold backs and I owe you a silver dime in change or whatever.
Well, we have point of sale systems that they could be programmed to calculate
there
this
could be,
stuff.
but then you've got to have silver dimes on hand.
Yeah, I'm not saying that would be good.
Needs to know that
I just
the silver
wouldn't object to it.
Then
right?
the customer needs to know that the silver dime is a 90% silver only if it's before 1964, and there's like all these details that are just not going to work as far as any kind of system is concerned. So
yeah, I think worst case scenario, if you use a gold back, you're out $3 worth of gold. It's not the end of the world. I mean, that's a tip cushion effectively. So just presume you're tipping the business that extra $3 and carry on with your life.
That's the way I look at it. But then again, we are activists and we are people who want to see these things be utilized. And so our incentives are different from maybe the average person. And we, I think, do want the average person to start seeing value in these alternatives to the dollar, right? Like, we don't want it to just be this insider's club that only a few people use. We do want people to realize that there are other options out there and start to value those other options. And some of those people are trying to get their bills paid at the end of the month, and they might want to get their they might want to get some change. I don't know that. I don't support that.
Because the way they see it is they spent $4 and they want it to be worth $4 when they spend it. So I can see that.
That's not how I see it, though. I spent a gold back.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, but if you go into let's say, I don't think Corner News takes gold backs officially at this point, but if you were to go into
if Roberta was there, I bet you could talk her into it.
She probably would. She used to sell silver back in the day that the activists provided her. But anyway, if you went into Mighty Moose Mart, where you work, Bonnie.
And they do take gold backs.
Do take gold backs. And you buy the cheapest item in the store, like a piece of gum, cost less than $1 or whatever. And it's hard to find something that's less than $1 these days. But if you were to buy something that was
we have fudge on the counter that costs 49 cents.
That's really cheap for fudge. So, 49-cent fudge, and you hand a gold back over. Now you're talking about, a small fraction, 1/8 roughly, of the value of the gold back has been spent.
I'm going to do this tomorrow just to mess with Chris, okay?
I don't think he'll mind.
But you and I wouldn't care that much. In fact, what we would probably do is just buy more than one piece of fudge, right? Because that would be the easiest way to deal with that.
I just want to see his reaction.
Then you have a bunch of fudge instead of just one piece. But somebody else might.
Maria?
Go ahead, Sam.
So you were also saying that you thought you wouldn't get robbed with it, and I would agree with you on that because, one of the bigger precious metal dealers here in Ohio, they literally would not buy it if you had them to sell them.
They would not.
If you had them what?
Run that by me again?
If you had gold backs here in Ohio to sell, and you went into this one precious metal dealer, they would not buy them from you because they don't think they're gold.
Well,
so
they're morons.
You would not get robbed like you said.
Well, that's stupid on their part. I mean, they can be melted down. They can be verified that they actually contain the amount of gold they're supposed to have.
I mean,
Finest Known is a huge precious metals online. I don't know if they're only online, but they sell precious metals and they accept it. So I'm pretty sure these people could get with the program our competition does it.
The United Precious Metal Association is thumbs up the gold back. So,
well, that's kind of where it started. So,
I still agree with Aria that if somebody robbed her, they might be like, "Where's the green dollars?" Throwing the gold backs,
Yeah, they would not want the gold backs. I'm confident of that.
I don't think you really have to worry about it. We live in New Hampshire. The odds you're going to get robbed here are pretty slim because there's people with guns everywhere. Sam, thanks for the call tonight. Appreciate it. The number here, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. It's early, though. I mean, people want to know, can you go around and spend the gold back in a bunch of places? And the answer is a surprising amount of places take gold back at this early stage.
I'll be spending them Friday when I get barbecue.
Keep in mind that... And by the way, it's usually a lot of the crypto accepting places that are open-minded and they're willing to take gold backs. They tend to kind of go together. But the gold back people... The New Hampshire Goldback's only been around for 1 year at this point, so we're just getting started with this. There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at MyMagicMud.com. FTL20, MyMagicMud.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. You can join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, you've got Ian.
Aria.
And Bonnie.
Bitcoin.com is where you can go to get started learning about cryptocurrency. Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. You'll get the basics when you click Get Started there at the top of the page. Lots of useful information at your fingertips. It's something that's going to be around for a very long time. That is cryptocurrency, so you might want to start learning about it. It's never too late to get started at Bitcoin.com. Now, if you're already into crypto and you want to get the latest news headlines, they've got those for you over at news.bitcoin.com. That's news.bitcoin.com. As we go to your calls here, well, let's talk to Sarah in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live, Sarah.
Let me get the speaker. Okay.
Don't sit up too quickly.
I just want to say we are going to get those red light cameras back in Albuquerque at the end of the year.
So they want more people to die, is what you're saying.
Actually, we had the most highest traffic fatalities last year than ever before.
Well, you're going to have even more with the red light cameras coming back.
Are these the ones that turn red for speeders, or are these ones that detect people who run red lights?
That's what I was
The latter.
Okay.
That's what a red light camera is.
Wait, why will it kill more people?
Okay.
The reason it kills people, this is the reason why they've actually gotten rid of red light cameras in a lot of cities, is because people know they're going to get a ticket, and so they're more likely to slam on the brakes as they are going through. I mean, it might not kill, but it'll like whiplash them. There's a lot of people that are going to get hit like rear-ended. So rather than get the risk a ticket, they will go ahead and slam on the brakes at a place at which they would normally not slam on their brakes. Normally, they might go ahead and go through the intersection. But because they've slammed on their brakes, the person who's immediately behind them then slams into the back of them.
Well, it's their fault. They're following too close behind.
Sure, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen and that it's not the fault of the red light cameras.
It happens, and it's inevitable. I mean, there are times where you approach an intersection where you have to either speed up to go through or slam on your brakes, and there is no alternative because you're just there at the exact wrong time.
Yeah. But you love this, Sarah. You don't care. You don't care about people's lives.
Violation of the Fourth Amendment.
That drive. You don't care about drivers' lives, I guess. You care about the pedestrians' lives, but the drivers don't mean that much to you, right?
Well, it turns out, no, all of it. All of them. Pedestrian, traffic, drunk driving, drug driving, speeding, everything, all the crashes, they all went up, all together. That's what I'm telling you. And
what are red light cameras going to do about any of those things?
Well, we had actually lower fatalities and less speeders when we have those.
But correlation does not mean causation. We also have had more people abusing drugs because of the lockdowns and their, livelihoods being ruined.
But anyway, this time we're gonna rat people out.
This time what?
If you let your son or your girlfriend or your daughter drive a car and they're the one that ran a light, they give you some time now to say that this is not me in the picture. So then you could pawn off the ticket to somebody else that you loaned out the car. Otherwise, before then, you had to file a stolen car report to say that it was not you, because it would just get billed to the owner of the vehicle.
Where's the news about this? Where did you hear that they're bringing this back? Because I can't find it.
It's on the KKOB. It was announced on the KKOB.
Huh.
I will give it to you, Sarah, that having some sort of mechanism for a person to let a friend drive their car and run a red light and the owner of the vehicle not be on the hook for whatever that person happens to do is an improvement. But it's also kind of obvious, and it should have been there from the start. Like anyone with a brain will know, hey, look, sometimes people loan their cars to other people, and we need to have some sort of system in place that allows people to say, hey, look, I wasn't the driver here. My friend was, without them having to file a stolen vehicle report.
Well, you know what? When things get started in the beginning, it takes a while to get all the lumps out.
So those people who were on the hook for fines for running red lights that they didn't run, they're just the kinks that had to be worked out. The Jews who had to get put to death to make the perfect Nazi society, they were just the kinks that had to get, there were some bumps to get ironed out in order to have our perfect society, right, Sarah?
Well, I mean, it's not perfect, but now they got these speeding cameras. It's mobile. It's not a van. They felt like they had to have it in a van where it's got wheels on it, but now they got these little speed cameras that are mobile. You could move it from intersection, and it's not inside a van. So it's going to be
no
a
response
little bit
to anything that I said at all.
So it's like a drone?
Yeah, I don't understand this either. I thought most red light cameras were just attached to the red light.
She's saying speeding cameras now. So she switched from talking about red light cameras to speeding cameras. She just loves cameras. The more cameras, the merrier for Sarah. The more tickets that they write, she really gets excited about that.
Sarah, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. But to get back to that point, what about the person who is the egg? That they're being fined for this thing they didn't do, or now they're in a wheelchair for the rest of their life because they slammed into the back of someone because they slammed on their brakes. What about those individuals who are being punished because of these things?
Well, those people need to get the people that got T-boned because they ran a red light at
But
their
they
cars
didn't.
at
They
50
didn't run a
miles an
red light.
hour.
I'm presenting a scenario where someone slams on their brakes so that they don't run a red light, and the car behind them slams into them, and now that car who slammed into them is in a wheelchair for the rest of their life because the person in front of them slammed on their brakes to avoid running a red light. What about that person who's now paralyzed for life?
Those people need to talk to the people that got crippled and get their back broken because somebody did run a red light.
They are the crippled person. Okay, so we're not eliminating the amount of people getting crippled. We're just changing the victim to someone else, from one innocent bystander to another. And this is an improvement
increasing
to you.
revenue. That's the thing you get with the red light cameras is more revenue. And Sarah thinks more revenue means what?
More
Sarah?
red light cameras?
Better quality of welfare tickets.
Well, maybe I'll get higher rebate. Maybe that's a good thing. You know what I mean?
You get a higher rebate?
Yeah, more.
What does that mean?
So you get more money
Maybe I'll
back from taxes if person
more
B
people die.
has a broken spine.
You talking about welfare?
No, I mean, because the traffic city. No, we had a lower fatality rate overall when we have those speeding bans, but your data is false.
When you say
Right,
you get
how
a
can we
higher
have, like, the
rebate,
biggest-
does that mean you get more welfare?
Well, I mean, it gets ponded out like that. Why not?
What year did they get rid of the
Several years
the
ago. She
cameras?
called about it a long time ago.
like more than 5 years?
Probably like 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah,
right?
about maybe 15 years ago, they had the vote, and it got voted out.
Sure.
And you think
long.
after all
the
these years, now that we have New Mexico has the biggest number of fatalities ever, it can't have anything to do with the lockdowns that happened for the last 2 years? You don't think that it has something to do with that instead of there aren't red light cameras? I bet most people don't know about the red light cameras.
I want to
I
make sure
think
I
they do.
understand this. You want more fines and more broken spines and more fatalities because this means that you will get more money in welfare? Is that correct?
No, more fines means that they're going to stop speeding and stop running red
No, it
lights.
doesn't.
They're going to get caught, and so they're going to drive better.
I thought she said
That's
more
what I
spines.
mean.
That is not what it means. Thank you for the call tonight, Sarah. I appreciate it. No. Fines have never made people drive better. Might make them drive more more dangerously with more risk involved if, like, for instance, again, to stop quickly at a red light rather than go through. That's actually increasing the danger to drivers, which again is why a lot of the cities that had red light cameras got rid of them because it was actually hurting people.
The increase to drivers is also increased because they're doing warrantless searches now.
More coming up. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The US says advisors have misled Russian President Vladimir Putin about the progress of the war in Ukraine. American intelligence also suggests that advisors have not revealed the full extent of the Western sanctions' impact on the Russian economy. White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield detailed the US assessment.
Putin is being misinformed by his advisors about how badly the Russian military is performing and how the Russian economy is being crippled by sanctions because his senior advisors are too afraid to tell him the truth.
The UN says more than 4 million people have now fled Ukraine. The majority, some 2.3 million, have entered Poland. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences says actor Will Smith was asked to leave the Oscars after he slapped Chris Rock, but refused. The Academy has now initiated disciplinary proceedings against Smith. The US says it plans to end its use of a pandemic-era border policy known as Title 42 that allows officials to turn migrants away from the US-Mexico border based on public health concerns, as FSN's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The Biden administration plans to lift an emergency health order that has restricted immigration into the U.S. at land borders. Title 42 is used by Border Control to turn people away because of concerns of the spread of coronavirus in immigration detention centres. But border officials are concerned that without the rapid turn-back policy, they may be overwhelmed with migrants. Homeland Security officials have contingency plans in managing as many as 18,000 encounters a day at the border, with the policy change likely to take effect in late May. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Bruce Willis is giving up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. He's suffering from aphasia, a condition that affects a person's ability to communicate. The announcement was made by his family on social media. US markets closed down on Wednesday as oil prices increased once again. Investors reacted to signs that progress in the Russia-Ukraine peace talks was waning, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports from New York.
The Dow was down 66 points or 0.2%, while the S&P lost 0.6% after 4 days of gains. And the Nasdaq ended the day 1.2% lower. Ongoing concerns over the war in Ukraine prompted oil prices to rise more than 3% to hit $107 a barrel. It comes after Germany warned it could have to ration natural gas because of a dispute with Russia. Semiconductor firms did poorly, with Nvidia down more than 2% and Micron falling 3% despite releasing a stronger than expected earnings report. Meanwhile, new data showed the labour market in the US continues to do well. Private payrolls rose by 455,000 jobs last month, which was above expectations. Sarah Walton, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it's Free Talk Live. The phones are open. If you want to join us here, you can bring up whatever's on your mind. The number, 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Ian.
Aria.
And Bonnie.
603-283-6160. You can join us online. We do have our social media site. We're talking about how earlier there was some comment on the big tech corporations and how they're doing the bidding of the state voluntarily. Well, you got to choose the alternatives. And there are alternatives. We've got one of them. It's a Mastodon system, which means that it's an open source, self-hosted, federated system. So it's connected with the other Mastodons out there in the world, and there are thousands of them. But you can go to social.freetalklive.com to join ours and interact with some of the Free Talk Live hosts as well as other Free Talk Live listeners there. It's social.freetalklive.com. We're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts here. We've got Farmer Garrick. He said he was in a bad cell earlier. Are you with us now?
I am.
Excellent, sir. Yeah, what's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, I caught you at the end of the last hour, and you were talking about texting, email, or just communications with young kids.
Mm-hmm.
It was so strange because just today I texted my nephew, so he's just got at the age where his parents got him a phone. He's 14, 15, right there, just had a birthday.
Hmm.
And, you know, I grabbed his cell phone that day, just programmed it in my phone, and then I haven't texted him since then or even communicated with him. And I just said, hey, buddy, what's going on? How's the phone? And his response was, it good, thanks. And that was it. And it was exactly what you guys were speaking about at the end of the last hour. It good, thanks, no comma, no. And I kind of gave him a hard time. I texted him back and said, well, I'm glad the phone's working. I think we need to talk about your text grammar the next time we're over at your house. You know? It was just so strange that you guys were bringing it up. I usually just listen to the podcast, and I just was, because I'm out here working, and it good, thanks.
Now, do you think...
I'm a troll, so I would respond about, I'm glad to hear it good, thanks.
I know. But it's my nephew. He's just got a phone. He's just trying to,
I don't mean to be insulting. I don't mean to be insulting, but I have to ask, is he not that bright?
No, he's quite bright.
Okay.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a factor. It's just a young people thing. Young people text like that, and then old people type
completely agree.
wrong a lot of the times in a completely different way.
What you're saying is they don't think it'd be like it is, but it do.
No, and I just, this is probably, wouldn't he get the phone 2 weeks ago or less? And I just thought, well, I want him to, in case he needs something from me in an emergency in the future, just to know that I'm out there. And
sure.
I usually only do that once or twice with my nieces or nephews, just so they know I'm here if they need something. But I just said, oh my gosh.
It's frustrating. Now, if you go back to the days when, let's go back, 15 years ago, when people only had the dumb phones, as they call them, right? Where you had, 20 years ago.
You had to hit the same character,
two or three times
number repeatedly to get to the character you wanted.
Yeah. So it was like, if you want the letter C, you have to press the 2 button 3 times or 2 times or whatever. And so that you could give somebody a pass, right? Like if they didn't want to find the comma button and just switch through 10 different things before they get to, you could give somebody a pass on that. But now there's a key for everything, and it's relatively accessible, so you don't really have that same excuse of now it's just plain old laziness. Right?
It is true that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, what I even do sometimes when we're driving around, and so I don't want to text if I don't have to, I hardly ever do, but I will have my kids text for me on the way when we're heading somewhere, and I always tell them, do not send it to you, reread it. Do you have a period? Do you have, it's obviously text is not long. Just make sure, read it back yourself and just make sure it makes sense. I don't know why people don't do that.
See,
that to me sounds like good etiquette.
SMS, but the simple messaging system, just an ordinary text message. That's where I'm laziest when it comes to grammar. It may not always be. It's not going to be something like "it good thanks" or "it do be like that" or whatever. But that's where I'm going to be laziest. If I'm going to use an abbreviation for like the letter U for the word "you," that's where it's going to happen. And that's probably not going to happen.
But I'm teaching them now because. It doesn't have to be long sentences or anything. I mean, it's just text. You don't want it to be long. You don't want to bore people, but you don't want it to look. You don't want to look dumb.
You don't want. I would hope that people don't want to look dumb, and that's why I'm concerned that maybe many of these young people going to government schools are just not learning, proper expression. And but it just could just be pure laziness. Thank you, Farmer Garrick. Anything else you want to share tonight?
Did you ask your nephew why he just responded with "it good thanks"?
You know what? It was just like an hour ago when I responded, and all I said was, "We need to talk later," and I'll talk to him. Hey, Ian. Do me a favor, and you need to shout some of us out who are still giving you money through PayPal. It's always nice to hear our names every once in a while, even though we haven't gone over to Patreon. I sure hope
you can actually still give through PayPal via Patreon.
That's what I do. That's what I've been doing for 7 years. Yeah.
No. But what I'm saying is, you can actually join the Patreon and
use PayPal
to do that.
Nice. So, well, thank you, Farmer Garrett.
I know. I'm just lazy.
It's just we are pulling the names from the Patreon because that's what we're promoting at the moment. But yeah, we definitely appreciate the support and thank you.
Yeah.
Do that. All right.
Appreciate it, man. And if you want to join the Patreon, you can head over to amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Technically, we actually don't get as much through Patreon because they take a larger percentage. So it actually does kind of hurt financially to do that. But you get more features that way. You get the AMP Only podcast that way. If you care about that, that's a thing you get through the Patreon. And so you can go to amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com, and you will get the shout-outs that way too, just because it's just easier for us to pull that info from them.
Yeah, significantly easier.
Yeah. So phones are open, 603-283-6160. Was there anything else we needed to talk about texting? I think we've covered that one, right?
Oh, I have one more.
Yeah.
This is a thing young people do, and it drives me so crazy. It's a huge pet peeve. Is when they want to start a conversation with you.
Oh, I know what you're going to say now.
So they'll just text you, "Hey." And you have to respond back. Right? No. You have to respond back, "Hi, what's up?" And then they'll say, "Nothing much. How about you?"
Oh,
and then get to the point of what they're talking about. It's so annoying. If somebody just texts me, "Hey, can I do this?" and instead of this for
Right,
text
just
exchange.
jump right into it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you want. You're texting because you want something. Just tell me what you want. Save everyone's time.
That's why I prefer texting instead of talking, and that's one of the reasons I hate text-to-speech and stuff, or people recording messages and sending me like a minute-long message or whatever, because it then takes me a minute to listen to what they have to say.
As opposed to just scanning through it with your eyes.
Where if they typed it out and sent it, sure, it takes them longer, but it'll take me like 10 seconds to read it versus taking a minute and a half or whatever to listen to it. It's inconsiderate. If you have a message you want to convey, your goal as a communicator is to convey that message in the way that is most convenient to the receiver of that message. And the whole recorded speech getting sent thing, I'm sure there's a term for it that I'm just blanking on. That's the opposite of good communication. It is 100%.
We have a friend who does it
the
all the
opposite
time.
of good communication. I know. So do I. And I told him about this, that it's selfish, it's inconsiderate.
Well, of course. Yeah.
And
what you'd expect from him.
And it puts all of the work on the receiver. If I have to then go and decipher it.
I generally will only, back when I used to use Telegram, which I'm not allowed to now under my bail conditions thanks to the Crypto 6 situation, but when I used Telegram, I used to only do the recordings when I was driving.
Which is sensible. If I hear the background noise of someone driving, I'm like, okay, this makes perfect sense. I don't want this person to die because they're sending me a message.
The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can share your thoughts on internet etiquette. It seems like it's a lost art, I think, these days. Or the new global financial order. Coming up also, Arya, you're going to tell us about Americans that can't even live paycheck to paycheck. That's on the way as well. It's Free Talk Live.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You're invited if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Whether you want to talk about internet etiquette or the lack of it, or the situation in Ukraine, the Russian statement here of the New World Financial Order is incoming. That's what we just started, probably like more than an hour ago at this point. And I do want to pick back up. Before we get into something a little more local about Americans and their living, not just paycheck to paycheck, but not even making it to the next paycheck. Aria has that story on the way. And again, the number is 603-283-6160. The story here from RT, they are citing ex-Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who is now apparently on the Russian Security Council. He's the deputy chairman of that. He wrote on Telegram that the hellish sanctions...
Isn't it interesting that Telegram remains so popular in Russia?
Even after the Russian government tried to take it down?
Yeah. Like, I thought it was weird when that Russian news agency was out here last year or the year before, whatever it was, that their preferred method of communication was Telegram.
That is interesting.
Okay, I get it. That was my preferred method of communication too, so it wasn't a problem. But it's like, they were Russian state media, and here's a Russian state official
using Telegram,
which is banned in Russia.
It was.
It's
actually,
not now.
It's funny you bring it up because I was just reading an article about Pavel Durov, who is the founder of Telegram. He's a Russian, as I understand it, who ended up leaving Russia after the state was coming after him for creating Telegram, basically, which he made it, as I understand it, as a way to get around Russian censors and internet restrictions and such. And they did ban Telegram for some time in Russia, and then I don't know why, but a couple years after that, they did undo that ban. So,
ooh, that's kind of suspicious.
Well, I don't know. I mean, right now, Telegram is jumping the shark, I think, in a lot of ways, sadly.
Do governments give back freedom very often?
No, they don't.
That's kind of suspicious.
They've been doing restrictions on Telegram. I believe they agreed to censor certain channels in, I think it was Brazil, in order to avoid being banned in Brazil. So governments have been putting some sort of pressure on Telegram, and Telegram has been crumbling, it seems like, under that pressure, which is a shame. But that's the nature of running a centralized service. I mean, it's, they're going to get you at some point. They're going to co-opt your centralized services at some point. I don't believe there is a centralized service that could become as large as a Twitter or a Telegram or something like that without being targeted for some sort of control by the state. I just don't think it's possible. So that's why decentralization makes the most sense when it comes to communications methods, and having a bunch of centers rather than just one or just a few. And of course, that's where something like Mastodon comes in, which is a Twitter replacement that is open source and can be self-hosted.
Or Matrix.
Or Matrix, which is a chat server system that we have. We have one of our own. You can go to chat.freetalklive.com to get the instructions on how to to get on our Matrix servers. So these are two options, and I'm sure there are others. And there are some that are even now more decentralized. I remember right before the raid happened on our studios and homes last year, which was this month when that happened, so we've now crossed the 1 year mark. But right before that happened, we were testing out something called Manyverse, which is a fully decentralized social media system. Meaning that there are not servers that you have to rely on. You can set up a server if you want to, but by default, the program is set to run just on your phone and only interacts with the people that you know, basically. And it can actually work without even an internet connection because it can connect via Bluetooth or via Wi-Fi. So if the internet goes down, you could still share social media posts. It would just share very slowly because you would only be able to share with those people with whom you come in contact, that come into your Bluetooth range. And then when they go into other people's Bluetooth range, it would share your posts to them and so on and so forth. It's kind of an interesting thing. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. It was
It's like one of those mesh networks that people want to create, which are fantastic ideas. Yeah. If you can get people on board with them, I think that's where they all ultimately fall apart. But yeah,
correct.
There has to come into existence some sort of decentralized method of communicating that is not the internet, right? It could be radios. Radios seem to be resurging in popularity to a degree. That could be it. It could work, but I don't think that's going to be good enough. I think people want the data communication, and you're only going to get that with something like a mesh network or something like that. And obviously mesh networks, they haven't gotten off the ground. They're not the answer, but something like that, it's got to come into existence.
Well, yeah, all of these things require participation, whether you're talking about a mesh network or you're talking about this Manyverse concept or a two-way radio. If you don't have people who are willing to use the tech, you have nothing. You have a technical idea that might be a good one, but if you can't convince people to get on the radio and use it, if you can't convince people to try this new technology of Manyverse and see how it works. And we did try it, and it was real clunky. It was like I wouldn't even call it beta level status. It's like alpha level. Or at least that was a year ago. Maybe it's way better now. I don't know. I'm not allowed to use any social networks without asking for permission first from my federal handlers. But I would say it had promise because, again, you could use it. It was online by default, and you could have centralized servers to kind of help connect people that you could kind of join. They called them pub servers. And it's a neat tech, so look into that one if you're looking for true full-on decentralization where no servers are even necessary. All right, so back to the story here. Again, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev saying that the sanctions are returning to the West like a boomerang. He says this is hurtful for our, quote, friends in Europe and overseas. But while the West continues its, quote, fruitless efforts...
I love that, he characterizes us as his friends. I can't imagine the average American being willing to characterize the Russian people as their friends.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know many of them, but the Russians I have met have been very fine people.
I know, but we're not the average American either, right? The average American right now is like, oh, Russia's evil, Putin, Hitler.
So dumb.
I don't know any Russians, but I've been getting all these recommended YouTube channels that are Russian to watch recently, which is really surprising to me. Like, I would think they'd try to hide them from me. I haven't been searching it, but I just keep coming across these Russian YouTubers channels, and now I just really like them.
I know at least two Russians. One of them translated the Russian state-run media that was out here. This friend of mine translated what was actually said about me. It was pretty nasty, as it turns out. But I mean, that's not surprising, right?
Yeah.
But she was willing to translate it for me, and that was really cool. Another one has actually, I think, been on Free Talk Live.
Well, here's a surprise. Russian people are like people.
Oh, that's so weird.
They have feelings like other people.
So they're like normal people, but from Russia.
Right.
And they're being hurt by a government just like most people.
Sure, they're being taxed and controlled and regulated and, forced by their government gangs just like the rest of the world are. And they want a lot of the same things as the rest of us do. They want a nice warm home and that they can sleep in with their and have a family and get the bills paid and
I wonder
have a
how
long,
many
happy life.
I wonder how many Americans right now who are critical of all Russians, who don't stand up against the war or whatever, all Russians are bad to them right now. I wonder how many of them thought, at least in the early 2000s, that all Muslims in Afghanistan are bad because they had a sign that said, like, death to America and stuff like that. It's
probably a lot of them.
It's no different because their country, the United States' country, the people living there, their government was attacking Afghanistan, so of course they were, pissed about it. But It wasn't the United States people's fault, but they were also,
Indeed.
They don't see it the same way as, I don't know.
While the West continues its fruitless efforts to restrict Russia, the world is gradually moving toward a new logic of global economic relations, toward upgrading the financial system, he said. According to Medvedev, the U.S. and EU have tarnished their reputation, he said, by blocking the reserves of the Russian central bank. Quote, "It's impossible to trust those who freeze the accounts of other states, steal other people's business assets and personal possessions, compromising the principles of sanctity of private property."
That's awesome. I mean, he's full of it, right? But I like the idea.
He's a thug, just like every other, former president anywhere.
He's certainly not pro-private property, but I really like the idea of a Russian official going off on the American government about their failure to respect private property. To me, that's brilliant.
Yeah. After the outbreak of the conflict in Ukraine in late February, the EU and U.S. froze nearly half of Russia's foreign currency reserves worth $300 billion. Washington created a special task force called Klepto Capture to oversee the implementation of sanctions against Moscow and seize the assets of individuals and entities who violate them. So a little bit more here on the way. Your thoughts are welcome. What about the people of the United States? How are they doing under all this inflation? Turns out life is getting more difficult. And we'll get into that coming up here in Hour 3. This is Free Talk Live. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The US says advisors have misled Russian President Vladimir Putin about the progress of the war in Ukraine. American intelligence also suggests that advisors have not revealed the full extent of the Western sanctions' impact on the Russian economy. White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield detailed the U.S. assessment.
Putin is being misinformed by his advisors about how badly the Russian military is performing and how the Russian economy is being crippled by sanctions because his senior advisors are too afraid to tell him the truth.
The UN says more than 4 million people have now fled Ukraine. The majority, some 2.3 million, have entered Poland. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences says actor Will Smith was asked to leave the Oscars after he slapped Chris Rock, but refused. The Academy has now initiated disciplinary proceedings against Smith. The US says it plans to end its use of a pandemic-era border policy known as Title 42 that allows officials to turn migrants away from the US-Mexico border based on public health concerns, as FSN's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The Biden administration plans to lift an emergency health order that has restricted immigration into the US at land borders. Title 42 is used by Border Control to turn people away because of concerns of the spread of coronavirus in immigration detention centres. But border officials are concerned that without the rapid turn-back policy, they may be overwhelmed with migrants. Homeland Security officials have contingency plans in managing as many as 18,000 encounters a day at the border, with the policy change likely to take effect in late May. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Bruce Willis is giving up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. He's suffering from aphasia, a condition that affects a person's ability to communicate. The announcement was made by his family on social media. US markets closed down on Wednesday as oil prices increased once again. Investors reacted to signs that progress in the Russia-Ukraine peace talks was waning, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports from New York.
The Dow was down 66 points or 0.2%, while the S&P lost 0.6% after 4 days of gains, and the Nasdaq ended the day 1.2% lower. Ongoing concerns over the war in Ukraine prompted oil prices to rise more than 3% to hit $107 a barrel. It comes after Germany warned it could have to ration natural gas because of a dispute with Russia. Semiconductor firms did poorly, with Nvidia down more than 2% and Micron falling 3% despite releasing a stronger than expected earnings report. Meanwhile, new data showed the labour market in the US continues to do well. Private payrolls rose by 455,000 jobs last month, which was above expectations. Sarah Walton, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We're going to talk today about a place we rarely mention, the Solomon Islands, out in the Pacific Ocean. They're making news this week because they are planning to go ahead with a security pact with China, despite the fact that it's causing fury in Australia, New Zealand and the United States. A draft agreement revealed this week would allow Beijing to send security and naval deployments to the islands, stoking Western anxieties that the move will destabilise the region. FSN's Beijing Bureau Chief Patrick Fock tells us more about what the island's Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare has been saying.
Well, speaking in Parliament on Tuesday, he said there was no intention to ask China to build a military base in the Solomon Islands, but he added that the leaked document was a draft and wouldn't share any details on the content of the deal. So that could very well raise a further alarm, really, among the likes of Australia and New Zealand and the US, who already expressed concern after the leak showed it would cover Chinese Navy vessels. On Monday, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said in particular that she saw little reason for the need to have China's presence in the region and that it could lead to the militarization of the Pacific.
And the Australians are now urging the governments of Fiji and Papua New Guinea to try and talk the Solomon Islands out of it. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, the US says advisors have misled Russian President Vladimir Putin about the progress of the war in Ukraine. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences says actor Will Smith was asked to leave the Oscars after he slapped Chris Rock, but refused. And Bruce Willis is giving up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
I mean, it's just so hard to believe that it's really all gone.
It was in this living room 3 weeks ago that the Talbot family discovered their DVR had suddenly and inexplicably crashed, deleting more than 5 years' worth of recorded live events and miniseries.
I keep having flashbacks to that day, to that moment when I realized everything was gone.
You know, you hear stories about people who mismanage their device settings, but you never really think it could happen to you. Honestly, it feels like some sort of a dream, like when I wake up, I'll be able to just go downstairs, turn on the TV, and all the episodes will be there again. as if nothing had ever happened.
Friends and family of the Talbots have pledged their support, organizing DVD donations and offering passwords to online streaming services while the family struggles to move on.
We know that we'll never be able to replace all the hours of programming that we had, but I think in the end we'll be just fine. As long as we have our 5 seasons of Seinfeld on DVD.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here as we kick off the third hour of the program. The number is 603-283-6160. In the studio with you, it's Ian.
Aria.
And Bonnie.
603-283-6160. On the way here tonight, we still have, of course, plenty of time for your calls and thoughts. We can also talk about the elites. Bonnie, you want to talk about people angry at the elites?
Yes.
We've been off and on talking about the world monetary situation that is developing now that the United States and the European Union, Australia, and other places have sanctioned Russia. We've seen some interesting developments happening where Russia is talking with India about doing ruble and rupee trades, and there's also it's China speaking with Saudi Arabia about doing trades in the yuan for energy. So very, very interesting things are developing out there that could possibly topple the dollar's world dominance. And that's sort of
I sure hope so.
The general gist of the show so far tonight. But again, phones are open here. Let's go to your calls and thoughts. Dan is in Nebraska to start things out here this hour. Dan, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello, Ian, and I wanted to call in because I've been listening to some of your guys' takes about the Ukraine, and in my opinion, I think we have a duty to history to intervene in Ukraine and deal with Russia in the way that we have so far.
Yeah, so go do it, dude.
No, if you feel that way, yeah, you go do it. I don't feel that way.
Yeah, why don't you go sign up?
Well,
for the Ukrainian military.
Oh, you want to send other
that's
people?
Not how it's going to get fixed.
I see. You want to send other people to die.
I'm not saying to die. We haven't particularly been sending our people to die.
People die in war.
But you think they should?
Well, no, I don't. I'm not supporting boots on the ground right now. But I mean,
what are you supporting?
I don't see what. Well, I'm supporting the sanctions for sure. I'm supporting the aid, and I'd support more aid. And
so you support billions of dollars of American taxpayer money being sent to support another murderous government.
The government we're supporting is by far the one being murdered more in this situation.
It's
really a waste.
I get it, man. I'm just curious. At what point did you realize you were a Nazi sympathizer?
I wouldn't consider myself a Nazi sympathizer. I mean,
how many
Ukrainians have a Nazi force, a Nazi division within their army, right? Like an actual literal Nazi division. You knew that, right?
First,
you're not advocating people go fight in this war, and you don't even know. You're not advocating for people to go fight in this war, and you don't even know that some of them are Nazis, right?
There were hardly any Nazis in that.
Oh, just a couple Nazis.
The ones that were, yeah.
And they're not even in their own division anymore. They've been integrated into the proper Ukrainian army, so now they're like actually Nazis in the Ukrainian army.
How many Nazis is incredibly negligible. It's incredibly.
Dan, how many Nazis do you give millions of dollars to before you would consider yourself as a supporter of Nazis?
How many of them? Well, I think that it would have to be a point where these people can materially further Nazism in a meaningful way with that money, whereas I really don't believe that's ever going to happen with the Ukraine. And
so you didn't have an issue with the Unite the Right rally in Charlotte, right?
The amount of people who were even sympathetic to people like Bandera has been going down slowly over time. It was at its peak in recent history under Yanukovych, and it's been just dwindling and dwindling ever since. On this trajectory, if we support Ukraine, the Nazis will eventually just go down in number to the point where
Okay, question then, Dan. So you didn't have any particular objection to the Unite the Right rally that occurred in Charlotte a few years ago, right?
Charlottesville.
Because I mean they weren't materially.
I don't. First off, I mean, I don't think it should be against the law for those people. So,
That's not what I asked.
They're free to do what they want to do. I'm not against that. Okay. Do I support their message? Of course not. I mean,
no. Would you be willing to give them money simply because they can't materially cause Nazism to rise to fruition or whatever it was you said about the division in Ukraine?
Yeah, the government's going after them. Do you support giving them money for their defense fund?
So
a government's after them, a murderous government.
Insofar as I think good is coming to the world by supporting them, I think that there are some scenarios that I would probably think of. So
why do you think good is coming to the world? I mean, their sanctions are affecting.
Can I please finish my point really quick?
Go ahead.
So when we say support, I would be willing to, in the case of, I don't know if they were going before a Supreme Court or to for their free speech. In that case, I would support them, and I think that supporting even a agency or a firm that took that case to protect free speech might be a good use of that money, even if only for something like that on principle. If their interests somehow align with mine and they further values like that.
Well, you can personally give money to something like that, but the thing you were actually
giving them weapons, though.
What you were suggesting when you first called in is taking other people's money and sending it to Ukraine. You can send your own money to Chris Cantwell's defense fund, and nobody cares. Nobody on the show gives a crap. But why do you want to steal other people's money and send it to Ukraine? I just don't understand that. Just because you chose a side,
hold on, actually
something that doesn't involve you.
Spending money on these weapons actually helps grow our economy.
Oh dear God!
I don't care if the economy crashes because we don't go to war.
Requires war and bombs and guns and military spending in order to sustain itself, then your economy doesn't deserve to exist.
This is what's called the broken window fallacy, Dan. Have you ever heard of it?
Enlighten me.
Okay. You should go look it up because there's more than we're going to be able to
I can explain it pretty quickly.
Yeah,
it's like a shop owner goes and sees that his window is broken and he says, oh, good, now I can spend the money to fix it, and I'm giving that money to the economy in general. That means that I'm boosting the economy, and that's just not how it works. The economy would be better off if his shop wasn't broken and he got to use his money to make his cakes he was selling or whatever he was doing before. It's not a net plus for his window to get broken, so that way he can pay somebody to fix it for the economy.
It redirects money. Hold on, Dan. What it does is it redirects money to the politically connected weapons manufacturers that otherwise productive people would have used to produce more valuable things that people actually want rather than bombs and guns and death. And you're the one supporting bombs and guns and death here.
Okay, can I make a case for that? Please.
Yeah, let's hear the case for bombs, guns, and death being used against peaceful people.
So in order for the system we have today to work, we kind of need at least some sphere of the world to work, as a number of Western-style liberal democracies.
You mean to dominate people?
Hold on, Ian. Can I just finish my point real quick? So in this, there's going to have to be something necessary to protect that order, and the United States military is the thing that actually protects Western-style liberal democracy across the whole globe and keeps many Americans employed doing it.
Wow. Are you really keeping a straight face while you're saying that?
I am keeping a straight face.
You really believe that?
Yes.
You really believe in total dominance as far as the United States using violence against a sphere of the world to keep a system in place so somebody can keep their precious little military job?
not just so someone can keep
And you're
their
willing to make
oppressive
it so people
it's so
die
that Western-style liberal
to support
democracy
this.
gets to exist and expand.
Why?
Western-style liberal democracy isn't worth killing people over. It's not the best system in the world.
But even if it was, the free market would cause it to be secure. Why would people?
Right.
Why are people coming after a free market liberal democracy? Why is it an enemy to people?
Well, yeah, and if it's so great, why do you need guns and bombs to make sure that it sticks around? Shouldn't it just stick around on its own volition because it's helping people and making them wealthy? There's more coming up here. You can join us. It is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever's on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Some of the chatters on YouTube are accusing the last caller of being a plant.
Yeah, I'm loving it because, Dan, it means you did such a terrible job of making your case that people are like, there's no way this person is serious.
Bonnie and Aria and Ian made that person call in just to make them look like they're so much less dumb than that caller.
No, if there's ever a setup call, I will say we've invited this person to call in. I will always,
Well, that wouldn't be a setup call.
Well, that's what they say. When somebody's a plant, that's the term to mean that we've set that call up. We did not. That caller has a history of calling Free Talk Live. He has not called in. He's not a frequent caller. He's not like a Sarah or something, but I recognize him because there's not that many Dans from Nebraska. First of all, we don't get many calls from Nebraska at all.
That's true.
And he's the only Dan from Nebraska that calls the show. And
now we know that he's the only caller, to my knowledge, who would defend killing people so that way he could keep his military job in Nebraska.
Yeah, and he used to be like a libertarian kind of incel type, if I recall correctly, years ago. Maybe he wasn't libertarian, but he was. I feel like he was. It's been a while. And then he got himself his first girlfriend in college and completely went hard left.
Because she was?
Presumably. Yeah. And so there you go. I mean, that's basically all of the talking points. But that
was hard, right? That was neocon nonsense.
That's what the left has become.
Yeah, because if you follow Keynesian to its logical conclusions, then that's what all he was doing. Like Keynesian economics that Paul Krugman, the leftist, promotes. If you follow it to its logical conclusion, it is, well, we should have wars and the United States should be a dominant, causing wars for our economy.
Yeah, total nationalism too.
I mean, I know that. We know that because we're libertarians. We've thought this stuff through. But the people on the left aren't supposed to sound like neocons.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be better at dressing up their arguments so that they sound like Barack Obama, who said the same stuff as, Mitt Romney and George W. Bush. He just said it in a much nicer, more liberal sounding way.
And this is why I love Jeremy Kauffman's new video where he came out and said, we need to make the bombs more gay, because he's making that point.
And the liberals are freaking out over that video, by the way.
Did you see that, Ario?
Of course I loved it. I endorsed it.
Yeah.
Because I knew the liberals were going to come at him and say, no, Jeremy Kauffman's homophobic or transphobic. I'm like, no, he's not.
Ridiculous.
I'm friends with him. He's not. So now they can't say that.
Well, they'll say it anyway.
Yeah, but they'll be wrong.
You're not part of the collective.
Wrong.
So anyway, that's Dan there in Nebraska. I considered holding on to him, but he can call another night if he wants to keep making his talking points about the Ukraine situation. Because the thing that surprises, I think, a lot of people about the shift from the left is back in the George Bush administration, people on the left were anti-war. And so I think a lot of people still believe that people on the left are anti-war. And no, they weren't during Barack Obama. And they certainly aren't now. And they aren't even trying to sound compassionate in any way, shape, or form. They don't care about the lives of the Russian people who are being affected by these sanctions. The fact that you mentioned YouTube, I think, I don't know if you mentioned it online, but you follow a Russian girl on YouTube. I'm surprised they even let her broadcast because they've already demonetized all Russian YouTube channels.
She does say that she can't get her money out of it now.
So
does she put up like a Bitcoin address?
Yep.
Okay. Good.
Actually, both the Russians
for her. Nice.
that I follow have Bitcoin addresses.
That's really awesome. That's a positive development.
So, yeah, I mean, there are some positives in this situation, and we've been talking about the dollar's dominance on the planet is on the way down as a result of these sanctions. And they did it to themselves.
They did. And, we had a caller call in several weeks ago say that, they thought that this was being done intentionally, that the U.S. government was going out of their way to destroy the U.S. dollar. And I disagreed. I was like, no, they're just incompetent. But as I look around, I'm like, that caller was right. They could not more effectively have destroyed the USD if they had tried.
Oh, they're going to try.
I mean, it's clearly they were trying.
Right?
Like, this is what the United States government did. They could not have been more effective at destroying the USD if they had done it intentionally. Mm-hmm. Like, everything they've done in the last 3 years has been done seemingly with the single-minded goal of destroying the USD.
Well, that's the question. Is this being done intentionally, or are they just that incompetent?
How could it not be intentional? That was my thought then. I was like, no, they're just incompetent. But I've come around, dude. This has to be intentional. There's no way they're this incompetent. They're smarter than this. I know they're evil, but they're smarter than this. They know what the results of this inflation will be, and of blockading Russia and allowing other companies to buy, or other countries to buy Russian oil, but not in USD. They know, just like we do. We're not smarter than they are. They know these things. They're just doing it anyway.
Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president, now deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, says that confidence in reserve currencies is, quote, fading like the morning mist, unquote, and the prospect of abandoning the dollar and euro in this role does not seem like an unrealistic prospect anymore, he said. Quote, the era of regional currencies is coming, unquote.
I like that a lot better. I like competing regional currencies around the world as opposed to just one reserve currency.
Right. You want to do business with Russia? You're going to pay them in the ruble.
But I think there's value in having a universal currency. And
that is Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
That's what I was getting at. I think this is probably going to be really, really good for Bitcoin in the long run.
I hope so. Yeah, and the rest of crypto as well. And by the way, another story here that's related, RT pointing out that the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has indicated that all of the nation's energy and commodity exports could be priced in rubles. They haven't said for sure that that's going to happen yet. Now, obviously, as people who believe in the free market, we're against that sort of thing, right? Like if you're running a Russian business and you want to take dollars, you should be free to. If you want to take the Chinese yuan, you should be free to. But of course, Russia is not a free country, and they may indeed mandate that everyone in Russia start to do business in the ruble.
The ruble is Russia's currency.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the other
I'm kind of surprised they haven't already, but I guess that's true. They do sort of have an open market for currencies, at least at the moment, where they do have the official currency. But like here in the United States, you can accept other forms of currency as well.
Even before the invasion of Ukraine, Russia, even Putin, I think, was considering allowing Bitcoin to be legally used, but they wanted to, regulate it and everything. But they were considering integrating it into the banking system in Russia.
They want to regulate it, but I think in the long run they're going to see that its value is in the fact that they can't regulate it. Russia's going to see it, the US is going to see it, all of these competing regional currencies are going to see it as, sort of a universal way of translating a figure from rubles into USD and using it as a reserve currency, a currency, a medium of exchange.
It truly is much better at holding value than any government money. I mean, over time, it has gone upwards and government monies go down. Medvedev, the former president, just to wrap this up, he says, no matter if they want it or not, they'll have to negotiate a new financial order, and the decisive voice will then be those countries, or with those countries, that have a strong and advanced economy, healthy public finances, and a reliable monetary system, and not with those who endlessly inflate their public debt, issuing more and more pieces of paper into circulation which aren't backed by national wealth.
Dude, just at the United States next time, man.
Sing. All right, there's more coming up here. We got more on the people of the United States that can't even make it to a next paycheck.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The US says advisors have misled Russian President Vladimir Putin about the progress of the war in Ukraine. American intelligence also suggests that advisers have not revealed the full extent of the Western sanctions' impact on the Russian economy. White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield detailed the U.S. assessment.
Putin is being misinformed by his advisors about how badly the Russian military is performing and how the Russian economy is being crippled by sanctions because his senior advisors are too afraid to tell him the truth.
The UN says more than 4 million people have now fled Ukraine. The majority, some 2.3 million, have entered Poland. The Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences says actor Will Smith was asked to leave the Oscars after he slapped Chris Rock, but refused. The Academy has now initiated disciplinary proceedings against Smith. The US says it plans to end its use of a pandemic-era border policy known as Title 42 that allows officials to turn migrants away from the US-Mexico border based on public health concerns, as FSN's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The Biden administration plans to lift an emergency health order that has restricted immigration into the US at land borders. Title 42 is used by Border Control to turn people away because of concerns of the spread of coronavirus in immigration detention centres. But border officials are concerned that without the rapid turn-back policy, they may be overwhelmed with migrants. Homeland Security officials have contingency plans in managing as many as 18,000 encounters a day at the border, with the policy change likely to take effect in late May. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Bruce Willis is giving up acting after being diagnosed with a neurological health condition. He's suffering from aphasia, a condition that affects a person's ability to communicate. The announcement was made by his family on social media. US markets closed down on Wednesday as oil prices increased once again. Investors reacted to signs that progress in the Russia-Ukraine peace talks was waning, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports from New York.
The Dow was down 66 points or 0.2%, while the S&P lost 0.6% after 4 days of gains. And the Nasdaq ended the day 1.2% lower. Ongoing concerns over the war in Ukraine prompted oil prices to rise more than 3% to hit $107 a barrel. It comes after Germany warned it could have to ration natural gas because of a dispute with Russia. Semiconductor firms did poorly, with Nvidia down more than 2% and Micron falling 3% despite releasing a stronger than expected earnings report. Meanwhile, new data showed the labour market in the US continues to do well. Private payrolls rose by 455,000 jobs last month, which was above expectations. Sarah Walton, New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here, 603-283-6160. That's the number, 603-283-6160. And joining you here tonight, you've got Ian,
Aria,
and Bonnie.
Phones are open. You can take control of the airwaves. That's kind of what we do here on Free Talk Live. We'll be talking about economic-related things tonight, focusing on more of the world economy and the dollar dominance that may be coming to an end. And you're certainly welcome to comment on that or whatever happens to be on your mind. We've also talked about internet etiquette, so again, just kind of all over the place here tonight. But Aria, you had a story that's a little more close to home with the people in the United States. We've been sharing news about how obviously inflation is affecting people.
Sure.
The inflation, of course, for those that don't know, is an increase in the money supply, which does tend to lead to rising prices and makes life more difficult. People's wages don't keep up with the rising prices, and so therefore it makes the living standard, or it makes it harder to buy the things that you want to buy, and standard of living goes down. So now we had a story recently about 64% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And
yeah, I've got good news, right? That's no longer the case.
You don't have good news.
No, it's bad news. It's worse news, because now they're not making it to their next paycheck. 1 in 5 Americans are now running out of money before payday, according to this new survey. So it's a bit worse than being paycheck to paycheck, which is already bad.
Right.
But now they're not making it to their next paycheck. From gas to groceries, soaring prices are straining households across the board. More than 3/4 of working Americans said inflation has impacted their finances over the last year, according to a report by Salary Finance. Sadly, most of those Americans probably don't know what inflation is, so they probably don't know what's actually impacted their finances. They probably think, oh, higher prices have impacted it.
Those corporations.
Yeah.
Russia. Yeah.
Those greedy fat cats on Wall Street. While wage growth is high by historical standards, it isn't keeping up with the increased cost of living, which is rising at the fastest annual pace in about 4 decades.
Yeah.
When wages increase at a slower pace than inflation,
which is always.
Let's rephrase that. When wages increase at a slower pace than an increase in prices, paychecks won't stretch as far. Because it's not inflation. Inflation is not the increase in prices. Inflation causes. Of course, this is the mainstream media, so they're going to paint inflation as being an increase in the prices. But
yep. And I think it's not because they're being dishonest. I just think they don't know what inflation is.
They don't. They think a currency that is decreed to be the currency of the land is a flat currency. Right? They don't know the difference between a fiat and a flat currency. Now workers are running out of money faster. Roughly 20% of employees regularly ran out of money between paychecks, up from 15% last year, according to the survey of more than 3,000 working adults in February. I'm shocked that it was 15% last year. That's more than 1 in 10 Americans not even making it to their next paycheck. As a result, about 1/4 of those polled said it's harder to afford necessary expenses, and 1/3 are unable to build savings, issues that are particularly problematic for low to moderate income workers. That's incorrect entirely.
What do you mean?
2/3 of people are unable to build savings because it's roughly 2/3 of people who are living paycheck to paycheck. And if they're living paycheck to paycheck, that means they have no savings.
In theory, that's what that should mean.
Low earners funnel a bigger share of their budgets to transportation costs and other staples like food and energy relative to wealthier households, data shows. And I mean, that's a tautology.
Yep.
Further, people with $50,000 or less in annual income already have thinner margins between the money they take home and what they spend. While no one is immune to recent price spikes, smaller income households are feeling it most because they have less of a financial buffer. As we've talked about here on the show before, it seems like it should go on quite a bit more than that, but that's where the article ends. But they're absolutely right. I mean, these people, they were already living paycheck to paycheck, right? And now their gasoline is almost 100% higher than it was a year ago. I don't remember what gas prices were a year ago because
it was 2-something at one point.
I tend to not pay attention to gas prices because I'm going to have to buy gasoline.
To pay for it.
I know, that's always been my problem.
Yeah, so it doesn't make much of a difference to me what gas prices is. But the other day I was like, well, I had like 3/4 of a tank, and usually that's like $10 worth of gas or something, but no, it was $20 to finish topping it off just the last quarter of a tank. I was like, man, this is not right. And I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I can't imagine how bad that's hurting people like my sister who do live paycheck to paycheck or who aren't making it to their next paycheck, who are instead, getting out these payday loans or whatever.
Oh, bad plan.
I had a friend recently ask me about payday loans. I was like, how much do you need to make it to your next paycheck? $60. Oh, okay, here's $60.
You're never going to see it again.
I know I'm not going to see it again, right? But this is my friend. I don't care about that. The friend's not in debt as a result of this, and that's worth it to $60 to me to keep a friend out of debt. But these payday loan places, they take advantage of that.
Yeah, the problem. Look, I'm against the payday loans because they're insanely, the rates are nuts. But the problem with loaning money to friends is you'll lose a friend.
Well, this wasn't. I didn't look at this as a loan, right? This is a gift.
It's charity. Okay. Yeah, as long as you're going into it with that
there's
intention.
No other way to look at it because if you expect to get it back and you don't, you lose a friendship.
Yeah, you absolutely will.
So it's nice if it gets paid back, but I never expect that.
That's a good point.
I think if they're your friend, they're worth more than $60 if you want to help them.
Yeah, that is definitely a good point. Of course, at some point, when do you stop? Right? Like, is it going to be every week that they come back for $60 a week? At that point, and then you find out that they're doing drugs. I'm not saying that that's what's happening.
Or just not managing their money
case.
properly or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, in this case, okay, sudden increase in gas prices or whatever. I totally get it.
Yeah, I don't think I could be doing Uber Eats right now with $4.50 or whatever the heck it's at. Well, I don't know what it's at in Texas either, but.
I wonder if they're doing anything for like a stipend, if they are increasing their rates and giving, paying higher because of that.
I do a fair bit of DoorDash, and I will say,
really?
I don't drive for
DoorDash.
I order
you
from
order
DoorDash.
Yeah, I was like shocked.
And the default tip has almost doubled from what it was like 4 months ago. So I don't think they're doing a stipend, but the average tip has increased by 100% or so. Like used to be, if you wanted to order from McDonald's, I don't order from McDonald's, but if you do, it defaulted to a tip of like $3 or something like that. Now it defaults to like $8.
Maybe they realized that the tips for somebody bringing food to your house should be higher than the tips for someone walking over to the back of the kitchen and bringing food to your table. I think that people think too much like they're eating out. So like if, I don't know what, I mean, okay, I hate to be one of those people that are like, people need to tip more because it's like, it depends on your service. Yeah, but I'm doing the best I can to get from this pizza place where I waited forever for them to bring out your pizza, or they had some issues, and then I had to drive to your house and bring you food. Anyways, in New Hampshire, people tip really good for Uber Eats, but in Texas, sometimes I'd be like driving to get someone's food and then driving it to their house, and they'd give me like a $2 tip, and I'm just like, I don't understand.
Been 40 minutes or something.
I don't understand how that's possibly okay in your head. You know what I mean?
They don't
You're
know.
right. They think tip equals 10%, right?
Yeah.
So if their order is $20, like it's $2 tip. No, that's not the way it works when it comes to delivery.
Yeah, you're driving and going and picking up someone's food. I just thought that was so crazy. But for some reason in the Northeast,
just to clarify, don't you also get some sort of a driving fee?
Oh well, yeah, but that's like what covers your gas and stuff, and to make it worth your time is good tips.
I see what you're saying.
And for some reason in the Northeast, actually especially in Maine, people tip so great. Like I was shocked. I was like, I should leave Texas just for this because people tip so badly in San Antonio, but even worse in Austin.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because tipping is, like you said, it's something people don't really think about very much. People don't understand the differences between situations with tipping. They don't know what one thing should be versus another, and it's a very confusing. I don't know what to call it basically, but it's something that exists in certain cultures. It doesn't exist in others. So then you also have the cultural difference where somebody comes in from Canada where they don't have tips, like Canadians.
Or Australia, they don't have tips.
Yeah, Canadians are known for being terrible tippers because they don't have the habit of tipping. Right. And then it's like, well, what do you tip when you're at the restaurant? Oh, everybody knows you tip, 20% for good service.
Well, these people know these things, right? They just don't apply it. Like they don't. If they buy a $2,000 couch from Ashley's or whatever, they don't tip their delivery drivers 10% on that. They don't hand them $200. So they know the 10% rule doesn't always apply. They just don't care about the average person.
And it's because buying food from these services is like already expensive, so they're like, I can't give you another $10 on top of that.
That's true, yeah. All the fees on the deliveries are absolutely insane. There's more coming up here. You can share your thoughts with whatever's on your mind. This is Free Talk Live.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. You can take control of the airwaves here on Free Talk Live. Whether you want to talk about the economy, inflation, people living paycheck to paycheck, or worse, people who cannot make it to their next paycheck without some sort of assistance. It's Ian, Aria, and Bonnie in the studio tonight, and you can join us online anytime. Just go to freetalklive.com. You can download archives of the show there. Easy to access. You can also subscribe to our podcast. Go to feeds.freetalklive.com, and you'll find there the links to our RSS feeds. That will make it easy for you to copy those links and put them into your favorite podcast client. Now, Bonnie, there was a story you wanted to talk about tonight about people who are upset about the quote-unquote elites. Is that right?
Yes. This article is saying that the anger is misplaced that they have for the elites.
I'm curious to hear about this because generally, I don't consider the elites to be a friendly group. I think about the World Economic Forum and Bilderberg when I think of elites, people who want to control the world and, siphon off as much value from the little guy as possible.
Yeah, people to whom I'm a cattle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when I saw the title and then the subtitle, this is from Fee by Tom Mullen, I was a little triggered. I was like, why is it? Because I don't like the elites. It says, blaming elites is childish. It's time to put aside childish things. And I was like, what is he saying? But when I read it, I actually like what he's saying.
Let's get into it, because if he's talking about just rich people, then I've got no objection with people who've made their money through helping others actually get some new value out of services or products or whatever on a voluntary basis. So there's a difference to me between a productive person and somebody that uses the state to get their way.
Yeah, let's get into it. Yep. He says, first, let's debunk a loudly trumpeted fiction. Quote, corporate power. There is no such thing. Power is the ability to use force and violence with impunity. No corporation has that. Only the government has that power, and only as much as the citizenry will allow it.
That is absolutely not an accepted definition of power.
I don't know, because in the marijuana becoming legal thing, somebody made a really good point to me and said that the government doesn't actually have power. Okay, so people were saying if the states have the marijuana legal but the federal government doesn't, the federal government still has the power to come in and put your things or take down your businesses anyway that are selling marijuana. And somebody said they don't actually have the power if enough states do it, because they literally don't have enough people to do it. You know what I mean? And they don't have enough support from the citizenry that it wouldn't like the backlash wouldn't be bad enough for them to do it. So they literally don't have the power. Even if there are some words written somewhere that say that, they don't literally have the power. That's the reason they don't get taken down.
I'm just saying that power is a lot more than the ability to use force or violence or whatever it was they said without repercussion. Power means a whole lot more than that. Like a rich executive telling a girl, hey, you have to service me or you're not getting this job. That's an exercise of power, and it doesn't involve any amount of
she
force
could
or
turn
violence.
around and walk out the door. Yeah.
But he still very much has power. So to say corporations don't have power because they can't send an army into Russia or whatever, that's silly.
Well, plus,
that's childish.
Well, plus, corporations absolutely do have power when they team up with the state. So
that's what he's saying, though. They only have the power because they were teamed up with the state.
Well, he didn't say that.
He said no
only
corporation
the state
has that.
Power.
Only the government has power, and only as much as the citizenry will allow it.
Yeah, and he's also putting a dividing line between corporations and governments, and he's ignoring the fact that governments are corporations. So all governments are quote-unquote incorporated. That's a thing.
Yeah.
Leftists don't want to talk about that because leftists love to hate on corporations, and they never talk about how the city of Keene or the city of San Antonio incorporated on a certain date, and they are considered a municipal corporation. But going on.
Yes, very wealthy people have more influence over the government than everyone else. You should have known that before you built a government with such enormous power to begin with. And it was you who identify yourselves with the deceptively innocuous name We the People, who constructed the monstrosity that now defames you, or demands you take any injection it decrees and refrain from speaking any word or even thinking any thought that threatens it. You didn't build it all in one day. It took decades, but every brick in this edifice of evil was made of the same clay, invading the property of your neighbors to obtain what you believed was additional safety. Before each brick was laid, voices of reason warned you of the danger. You not only refused to listen, but derided all who appealed to your common sense. It's one thing to disregard the morality of respecting the life, liberty, and possessions of your fellows. It's another to refuse to recognize the obvious results.
Excellent point. I mean, a lot of these people, they were only in favor of these mandates and the growing government power because they thought government was going to do things that they liked, things that they approved of. It never even occurred to them that the power to, drop a nuclear weapon on Russia on a whim would fall into the hands of some lunatic like Joe Biden or some babbling madman like Joe Biden.
Because they gave them the power.
They gave their Republican buddies the power. And,
I meant to say Donald Trump. I don't know what the first name I said was, but I meant Trump.
Biden, Trump, what's the difference?
It says you told colleges and universities they too could charge whatever they wished, financed by loans guaranteed by taxpayers. You were again outraged, not only by the artificially high prices, but the students' inability to pay back the loans. What did you expect? It doesn't take an advanced degree in economics to recognize these obvious cause and effect relationships. Anyone with a 6th grade education and control over his emotions could spot them a mile away. Unfortunately, people meeting both criteria are in the minority.
Sadly.
So what I hear him saying so far isn't so much anything about elites. It's like, well, you get what you deserve because you asked for this. Is he saying that you wanted the elites to do these things with invading people's rights and privacies and freedoms?
That's my take. Okay. He's like, hey, you were all for these things. I mean, you were all for, government student loans and all of this other stuff. Well, the consequences of this were predictable, and people did predict them, and you ignored us, and now here are those consequences.
And you're saying, oh, now college isn't affordable.
Right.
Because rich people.
The exact same thing happened in health insurance. We're like, now health care is just totally unaffordable. I don't understand
How'd
why.
That happen?
Says one can trace the beginning of the problem as far back as one wishes. The Constitution itself was an enormous expansion of government power, passed much like the infamous Patriot Act, but even its powers didn't satisfy you. Throughout the following century, you participated with your banks in the fraudulent practice of fractional reserve banking, resulting in periodic panics. You didn't need government to protect you from these arrangements wherein you earned interest by foregoing use of your money while the banks lent it out were available to you. But you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. When the inevitable result occurred, you screamed for the government to protect you. You had been warned as early as the first Congress against allowing the government to incorporate a bank. You were told it was unconstitutional and economically destructive by none other than Thomas Jefferson himself. You ignored the warning and supported the bank. Ditto the second version.
Honestly, I think most people don't know jack diddly about what banks do and how they do it.
Hey, I didn't really know what fractional reserve banking was until L. Stone told me.
They don't teach you in government school anything about banking.
No, and we don't even have a fractional reserve banking system anymore.
They
got rid of that in COVID.
They made it worse.
Trump did. Trump got rid of that, right?
Yeah.
He made it even worse. You were again provided loud and vociferous warnings against the Federal Reserve System, a scheme that transfers wealth from everyone in society straight to those elites you were always complaining about. But you supported it overwhelmingly because it promised you safety from the aforementioned panics caused by your own refusal to accept reality. And yeah, nobody alive today did that. But
yeah, I was going to say he's talking to
he
people
said
who are...
you can go back as far as you want, and the same thing has been happening. Is what he's saying.
But he's talking to people who are alive today, because obviously people who are alive when the Federal Reserve was founded are almost all completely dead at this point. We're talking about 1913, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that would have to be at least 108 years old.
Yeah, so he's talking to people who are alive today and blaming them for what happened 100 years ago. I mean, I'll give him a pass on that one.
Says the history of rewarding tyrants and vilifying benefactors is long. The Federal Reserve was conceived in secret by a cabal of corrupt government officials and representatives of the Rockefeller and Morgan financial empires. Rockefeller had built his fortune honestly, foregoing larger dividends to reinvest profits in his oil company, resulting in growth for the company and decades of falling oil prices for consumers. When his competitors appealed to the government for help, you overwhelmingly supported breaking up Standard Oil. And of course, when he's saying you, he's not talking to anyone
he's talking
alive.
About people in general.
And this is how they still, but this is how they still act.
Yeah, I get that point.
Resulting in higher oil prices for you. And you're right, a lot
of those people would support the quote-unquote breaking up of Standard Oil if it were happening today.
Considering how his honest effort was rewarded by those it benefited, it's hard to blame Rockefeller for throwing in with the government in a scheme to make dishonest money at the same people's expense.
Well, I think I can still blame people for turning to the state. I understand, if you can take control of the system, then I get why they do it, but I still blame them for it.
And they don't make the system better or more moral?
No, they're making it more immoral by creating money that you can print from thin air. We'll take that story, Bonnie. We'll put it up on our social media over at social.freetalklive.com for people that want to explore that a little bit deeper. We'll see you tomorrow at freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.com.